All right. Good evening. The time being 7 o'clock, all members of the planning board being present, call this meeting to order. All right, first item on the agenda is agenda item A, which is approval of minutes from July 15th, 2019.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of July 15th, 2019 as written.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All right, motion made and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item B, committee reports, administrative actions. Does anybody have any committee reports they want to make at this time? Seeing none? All right, moving on to agenda item B2. So we have landscape discussion for iStorage 470 Main Street. This one will be pushed to our next meeting in the administrative actions. They weren't able to come this evening, so that's that one. Moving on to agenda item B3, informal discussion, Lowell 5 savings, 1775 Main Street. All right, if you just state your names for the record, the floor is yours.
Mark Conserva, Metro Sign and Awning, Mr. Chairman.
Allison Kalman, Lowell 5.
I wanted to thank the board for allowing us to come before them informally here. That would be Lowell 5, Fred C. Church, and Metro Sign and Awning. I'd just like to read the short paragraph I wrote here. The Lowell 5 Cent Savings Bank has entered into a lease agreement with Fred C. Church Insurance Agency to be co-occupants of its location at 1775 Main Street. The bank will still operate as a full-service branch to include office space, a conference room, teller windows, as well as the existing drive-up window. The insurance agency will occupy several office spaces. As shown in Exhibit A, that would be the last page of the handout I gave, attached, each business will use in common the two entrances, entry foyers, the computer station, and the entire main lobby. The zoning officer has determined this type of use is shared space as compared to two principal businesses, each with its own primary entrance. This interpretation, given the signage proposed per section 5256 of the bylaw, multiple signs will require a special permit from the planning board. As can be seen in the attachment provided, the building's design limits the wall space for signage purposes. The designs proposed makes the best use of the space available while allowing the two businesses the signage exposure they require. The point of reference is just referring to one of the handouts refers to location 3 and 4, and that just explains what those are. One is the pylon sign, which we have already got a permit to change that to include Fred C. Church. So we'd like the board's opinions, questions.
Did you have anything you needed to add?
No,
No.
that summarized it all.
All right, start, Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To be honest with you, I'm pretty well all set. Kind of self-explained. I appreciate all the internal documentation you have, but that can't be part of the permit. But it's nice to know, you know. But there's no problem with the sign outside. That's your business, your building, as long as it's and it's very close in use. So that makes it fine with us, with me anyway.
Mr. Fratelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also concur with Mr. Fowler that the sign with the addition of Fred C. Church does look nice. You have it centered, so it's right there under Lowell 5. I had just one concern about security. Are you planning on adding any more security cameras in there? Will you have a business in there with the bank?
So yes, there have been security cameras added, I believe 3 in addition. So is it being a bank branch? It has fully camered anyways, but we added some to the corner office area that was built out to the 3 offices that will be leased by Fred C. Church.
Good. That's great, because I was concerned with, insurance company that does want to go in there on a Sunday or something, or does some work at night.
Their business hours are tied to our lobby hours, so there won't be an extension of hours. So the bank's security procedures, they haven't changed.
Great, okay. All set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Delaney.
Yeah, I'm all set. I agree with my contact. Everything looks good.
Mr. Ryder?
Thank you. The only question I had was hours, so it's going to be tied to the bank hours, so,
Yeah, no
All set.
change in hours.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, nothing to add, so we'll look for the permit application, and we'll go from there.
Great.
All right,
Thank you very much.
thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So moving on to agenda item B4, we're going to take B4 and B5, and we're going to push those to the end. The folks coming in for those aren't here, so I don't waste everybody's time making them hang around when we're not going to discuss anything with the owners. Moving on to agenda item B6, 2122 Main Street, special permit extension request. Do we have anybody here for 2122?
I think he was here, Mr. Chairman. I think he's in the hallway, maybe.
Okay, give it a second.
It should be not.
Mr. Hammer, isn't it Matt Hammer?
Thought he was here.
All right, you know what, why don't we take B7 for a second, and then, oh, he's here for both those, though, right?
Yes.
Should be.
All right,
Do you want me to go first?
yeah, would you? All right. About to move on at the deli here, if we don't answer your number. We're on to B6, 2122 Main Street, special permit extension request.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Matt Hammer with Lamplex Engineering and Surveying. So we're here requesting an extension for
Can you
the,
lift that up? I don't think it's picking you up.
we're here requesting an extension to the special permit that was issued for 2122 Main Street. The client, Eli Saman, is out of the country right now on family matter. We do recognize that the previous extension that was granted by the board had expired a couple weeks ago, and we're requesting an extension for another 2 years. Our client's been having trouble on the financing end to actually get this development constructed, and just says he needs more time to try to put everything together so he can actually build this project.
Okay, Mr. Frataia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a problem with the extension. My only concern is that the property be maintained by you or by the landlord
Sure.
going forward. I know we spoke before about some cleanup issues that need to be done down there. So, with the property being on Main Street,
Yep.
we'd like somebody to take control of the cleanup and cutting of the weeds and all that, so it looks presentable.
I'll make
while we
sure
wait
that
for.
I'll make sure that happens on a monthly basis,
Good,
that they go through and mow that.
great, okay, thank you. All set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Delaney?
I'm all set.
Mr. Ryder?
Thank you. So his intent is to construct this
Yes, it is.
property? Does he have a timeline for, is there a plan in place? We're going to be back here in 2 years asking for another extension. That's my concern.
His plan is, we came, I don't know if you were on the board at the time, we
I wasn't.
came in with a phasing plan where he wanted to build he wants to have a secondary business for his jeweler's business, which is currently Nassar Jewelers up in Salem, New Hampshire. And he's going to open up a second store for the commercial component of this development. And then once he got that constructed, he was then going to go and build the townhouses as a second phase. But his intention is to continue and build the project.
All right, thank you. Awesome.
Mr. Fowler?
Well, I want to be a bad guy and say someone should watch the permits. It's up to you guys who apply for the permits, receive an extension or not,
Right.
or an approval or not. What would happen if it forgot about for 3 months? What should we do?
We're just asking for an exception in this case, but you know, yes, I should have something in my calendar that notifies me 3 months in advance to extend the client's permit.
Yep.
But I just don't take on that responsibility personally. But the client had just had it in his head that he was going to need to extend by August, and it just so happens when I looked at the permit, it had expired in the middle of July.
Well, thank you for taking the bullet. You and your client should realize that someday you'll be stuck with no permit.
Right.
So I know I don't have to tell you, but you maybe want to tell your client. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know, I don't have a problem necessarily with the extension. I'm not sure that I want to do 2 years. We've already done this once. You know, I don't like these things being open-ended forever and ever. You know, it feels like it also causes a feeling that you can wait. Because, you know, you put it off for 2 years, there's not a whole lot of fire lit under anybody to do what, you know, what they said when they came in here and were in, you know, such an, you know, all-fire hurry to get approved by us, that then comes to a screeching halt after we've, you know, approved it. So, I mean, obviously, if everybody else is fine with it, you know, I'm one person. But, you know, we did the last one for a year. I wouldn't be opposed to doing the same thing. And, you know, then we can get another explanation in a year why we still don't have this when, again, everybody that we've approved pretty much moves forward within, you know, a reasonable amount of time. They don't seem to have had too much trouble acting on the permits we've granted. So obviously the situation is different here, but I'm not sure, you know, it just sort of floats out there for a longer period of time. You sort of forget about it, and then all of a sudden things pop up. But again, I mean, that's just me. You know, the rest of the board, if that's the motion, 2 years, then that's fine. But I just don't know if you know, this isn't the first one. That's the thing. We've already extended it once. Now we're being asked to do it again.
That's fine, too. You know, you would think that it would need some sort of action within a year, and then we could come back if we needed that as an additional year to say, okay, we're moving.
Well, again, I mean, you know,
we've started
again, when it was
construction.
presented, it was, as you pointed out tonight, it was presented as a phased project.
Right.
And none of those phases have happened. It's not that you know, it wasn't like you were forced to do it all at once. What was presented to us was an intent and, you know, a desire to build the commercial piece first, which is sort of, you know, the opposite of a lot of the way the projects have gone in town anyways. They're kind of either done at the same time, or it's the residential part people would prefer to do first anyways.
Right.
But that wasn't what was presented to us.
That's
And
correct.
none of it has happened. And, you know, here we are extending it again. You know, again, like I said, that's just me. The rest of the board, you know, someone else is going to make the motion, so we'll see how it turns out. Anybody else with anything? No? All
Yeah,
right.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment. I kind of concur with your statement. I'm looking at the original permit dated August 15th, 2016. So it's been almost 3 years now, and now you're looking for another 2. So, I mean, I think we've kind of went above and beyond on our end just to do what we had to do for you. So, I mean, a 1 year's time frame, I think is not highly unlikely for us to approve something like that, so, and give you that time frame. So.
That's understood. All I can say is that the client is having trouble financing and getting this project built. The client has no benefit waiting because he's out all that money on the land acquisition and all the soft costs that go along with that. So the longer that time goes by, it's getting more and more difficult. But he has told me that he intends to develop this property on his own. He's not just trying to sell this project.
Okay. Okay, so do we have a motion on the request for an extension?
I'll make a motion to extend it for 1 year. You know, looking back, I'll have to agree. I mean, I'd like to see something happen with that property sooner than later. At least in a year's time, come back with a plan, and if it's necessary at that point to come back with another year at that point, I think I'd be inclined to go with 1 year.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, so I have a motion made and seconded, and obviously keeping in mind that it's now 3 weeks, less than a year that it actually is. So we have a motion made, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank
That
you.
brings us to agenda item B7, 357 Main Street Concept Plan. While you guys get settled, I just want to let anyone in the audience who's here for 1037 North Street, 1547 Andover Street at all, that's going to be continued. We will not hear anything on that this evening. So I don't want to make you wait around for us to get there and then wonder why we just continued it. So that the North Street / Andover Street project is the one that will be continued to our meeting on the 9th of September. Okay. Gentlemen, could you state your names for the record? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, David Plunkett for the applicant. Here also tonight is James Andella and Matt Hammer from Landplex, the consultant engineer. Just as a quick overview, I think everyone's fairly familiar with the site. Last time we were before the board, there were a number of commercial elements involved in the, in the proposal. After hearing the feedback from the board at that time, basically this proposal is eliminating the commercial aspect and going with straight residential use of the site. So 3 buildings with multiple units and 1 duplex building that's in existence. That is the only building that will have access from the Astor Street property through the driveway that's currently in existence. The other 3 buildings will not have access to or from Astor Street other than emergency access as shown on the plan, and that the access to the 3 main buildings, which, the project elements will be accessed through the Main Street driveway. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hammer and ask to give further detail on the structures.
Good evening. For the record, Matt Hammer, Landplex Engineering and Surveying, Lowell, Mass. So this plan is essentially the same plan that the board has seen before, I believe, when we were going through that process, when we were presenting this project as a local initiative project with the Board of Selectmen for an affordable housing project. We had 3 buildings here, and with those 3 buildings, each building is going to have 25 units in each building. And each building will have an underground parking garage to it and ample parking outside of each of the buildings. What has changed is that this project has received a street access permit from Mass Highway for this development, with the curb cut being located in this location. So that's the big change, okay? So the big question was, when we were going through this project before, can we get street access permit through Mass Highway to Route 38? And we in fact did do that. The development, as I said, will have 25 units in each. It'll have an emergency access point onto Astor Street. And these 3 buildings will be needing to obtain a special permit, where the special permit allows that in a commercial district, you're allowed to go over the 2.5-story maximum and go up to 5 stories. And in this case, we'll be at 4.5 stories. This development has also been fully engineered out, and that engineered plans were also provided to Mass Highway related to the drainage that obviously could affect Main Street, that's under Mass Highways jurisdiction.
Is that it?
I bring it to the board.
Anything else?
That's it?
What's up, Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your last phrase, talking about the Mass Highway, I'd be very interested to see what they say. And, I mean, they have the last word, obviously. But I just don't know how a person turning left there can cross those 2+ lanes to go towards Lowell. With a set of lights at Pike and Astle Street and a set of lights at the shopping center, Walmart Shopping Center. It's, unless they're timed perfectly, I don't see how someone can move out and not block traffic driving on Route 38.
So, as you can imagine, it was, this project was looked at very closely by Mass Highway, just like any other curb cut under Mass Highway's jurisdiction.
I understand that.
I think we went through a 6-month review process with Mass Highway, going over each and every one of those issues. And Mass Highway ultimately approved this curb cut, having looked at all of the issues that would come up related to cars coming and going, a full traffic report that was submitted. We retained the services of Kim Housevardian, who's a traffic engineer who I'm sure you know. And all I can say is that we did receive a street access permit from Mass Highway for the curb cut.
I'd like to say this again, and I'll add one thing. You never know who you're gonna get to review your next plan at Mass Highway, and I'm not blaming them, because this was approved or looked at by someone a year ago, doesn't mean the same person's gonna look at it and have the same philosophy. So,
It's the same.
Wasn't that-
Yeah, sorry.
wasn't that driveway lined up with the one across the street at one time?
It was, yeah.
So that's been moved, though.
That's correct.
So that's something different.
No, this location is what was approved, where it's
Okay.
located on this
All
plan.
right, we'll see if it's approved again.
Yeah, I'll submit a copy of the full access permit to the planning department when we go to submit for the permit site plan. And you'll have that document in your filing.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Delaney?
I really don't have any place to start. You know, it's a pre-plan, there's a lot of stuff here that's not in it yet, like the snow, how they're gonna get the snow out, and has the fire department actually approved this? They're coming in and out. Obviously, they don't think buildings burn in the back, so the fire truck has no way to get to the back of the building. In the driveways, you know, when the cars are parked, they're giving you like 25 feet. But when the cars are parked, they're never right up against the curb. I don't know if there's enough room, even in the parking spaces, for the fire truck to come in. And who's to say which way the fire truck is gonna go in? You know, do they just use the emergency? That's the way it's gonna be? Or do they use the one that comes off of Route 38 as well? And then how do they make the turn and get to wherever they want to go? If a mistake is made. That's my concern. I know that the lefts and rights, they're going to take place with this project. There is going to be dreadful. That's why Mass Highway originally made it that 3-lane road, 4-lane road, whatever it is, you know, come down to the lights and so forth. You know, one car coming up that road to take a left, it stopped traffic all the way back to the town hall. You look at it. That was my concern the last time it was brought in. That's my concern now. But obviously, there's a lot of other things that are missing. The fire department approval is okay with this. That's one thing, but I don't see that. You know, the trucks are big enough, but, you know, they come in, the cars are parked there, they get no way no access to get to anywhere, really. The only building that might have access to it is the building that's in the front.
Those are very good points, Mr. Delaney, and that was the
Just lift the mic up again.
And that was the first thing that we vetted out with the fire department to ensure that this layout, we provided all the turning radiuses necessary to meet their requirements, as well as introducing the emergency access point on the side. And we also have an access driveway behind this project that comes up alongside up here. So we'll provide that letter from the fire department that would show approval of the maneuverability of the fire trucks within the site.
Anything else?
Well said, sir.
Mr. Fratelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to see the report by the traffic person as far as that goes. I know traffic, access, congestion in that particular location is very difficult, so I don't know how he's going to manage that, but all issues to the public, to members of the planning board, I'm sure, as far as that goes, but I'll withhold some of my comments until we see some more information on this project. Sure. Thank you.
Mr. Ryder?
Thank you. I won't reiterate what everyone else said about the letter from Mass DOT. I would have liked to have seen that here with this proposal. Also, what's the grade change from Route 38 to
To the rear,
Yeah.
it's about 30 feet.
So 30 feet, what's the grade to that front building?
It all
between the road?
terraces up
So-
on 10-foot increments.
Okay, so you're roughly going to be about 55, you're talking 4.5 stories, an additional 10 feet.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, I mean, aesthetically, is this something we want as the gateway to entering to Tewksbury?
Right, we're going to ensure that we hire
Absolutely.
an architect that's going to really show that these buildings are going to complement this area that currently is, needs to be improved.
It does. You'll see, people will get a long, hard look at it, because if anyone that drives that road from 3:30 to 6 o'clock will sit in traffic for a good 45 minutes, and if you want to take a left or a right out of that property, you're going to sit for an additional 20 minutes getting out of that property. So I think traffic is your biggest issue here, also aesthetics. So I'm looking forward to the other, the full set.
All right, trying to revert back, is this is basically, as you said, this is what was brought in 2 times ago. Is that accurate?
Essentially the same layout, yes, different. The other one was different in the way that it was going to be an affordable housing development, so there was going to,
Well, no, let me just back up one, because it was brought in as a preliminary plan to us, and we were not in favor of what was brought in. Then it turned into a LIP program. So is this the same as that one?
no. So the layout of the buildings is, okay, the LIP was not embraced by the town in order for them to support doing that form of development. This is going to be more of a higher-end condominium complex. It's going to be over 55, I should have said that at the beginning, where over 55 is allowed in this district by special permit. It's not to be confused with the MFD 55 district. This is an over 55 development that's allowed in a commercial district. And it has parameters around the over 55 nature of this project. But these are going to be meant to be higher end. The other project was going to end up being different in the way that it was an affordable housing development. So they're different in the way that the construction and the type of buildings that we're going to be proposing. We're going to come back with some renderings for you folks to ensure that you're all amenable to the look and feel of these buildings. And I think you're going to find that this is going to be a high-end residential over 55 development. We came in before with a commercial development before, and that became problematic. It was increasing traffic with some of the uses that we were proposing. We were having trouble securing leases with folks coming into this development as a commercial development, and it was just hard for us to get our foot off the ground that way with that type of development. We felt as though the board would be more amenable with a higher end, over 55 residential development instead of a development that could end up being termed as an affordable housing development, or also a development that could potentially just generate more traffic, which seems to be a big concern for everyone. So this is the less intrusive development that I think you could put on this property.
What was the unit number on the original project?
It was 75,
So that number's the same.
yeah.
77.
We're
77.
calling it 77 because there's this duplex.
Oh, the existing,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh.
Okay. All right, well, I mean, I'll say this, I mean, you know, like I said, I've said it before, I'm loath for things not to be able to be developed, but, you know, we do have the same problem we had before, which is the current concern's gonna be size. And that was the concern originally. You know, I trying to remember exactly the conversation about the mixed one with the commercial. I thought we were more amenable to that because I thought it was better to have it broken up into less housing and a little bit of different things. But I mean, I could be wrong. I don't recall, the way you said it at the beginning, that we weren't in favor of that. I don't remember that being the case. I'm sure we had questions, but I don't remember us being negative to it, to the point we were to the original project that was brought in some time ago. I mean, you know, you've got your curb cut now, you know, obviously, and we've done this with every one of these when we've had them, the amount of aesthetics that's going to be necessary to make sure that these, you know, if they're approved, look like something that we want people to see as they're coming into town, and, you know, and I think will be substantial, as most of the projects lately, when we've gone over this, have been. So that won't be unique, but I mean, obviously, these are a good size in a pretty tight space. So, I mean, it's gonna, there are definitely going to be concerns when this becomes like an official submittal, as opposed to just in concept. You know, again, we're working just off the 2D, you know, plan right now, so I mean, I concerns about the size. I don't know, you know, where we're gonna get on that when we get into it officially. I don't know how many people, you know, the rest of the board, if they've chimed in on that now, and I feel like as a preliminary plan, if they're fine with it, or feel like they're gonna be fine with it, we probably should say so now, so you don't get a mile down the road, and then we start dropping the hammer on you when you come in. You know, and if, just to give you the kind of heads up, that's all. So, I mean, I do
That's why
have
we're
some
here.
concerns about the size. I don't know if any of the other members do. I think I'll go around again just to let everybody sort of, you know, make a comment on it, just because I don't want you to leave here today without hearing everybody where they feel like they are on this size for this project. I know we talked a little bit about the traffic, but I don't think the traffic's going to drastically change. That's a tough spot. So one way or the other, it's going to either get dealt with no matter what project might go in there. It is a tough place, but like I said, that's sort of my 2 cents on it.
Mr. Chairman, just in terms of, you know, the question about the last time in and the feedback, if you recall, you know, the last plan is submitted with the preliminary included restaurant and coffee shop, and there was a lot of discussion about, you know, potential queuing and traffic, you know, generated at different times of the day for restaurant use and coffee use and things of that sort. So the feedback, you know, the thought was that the commercial aspect was, relative to the traffic aspect of it was one of the, issues that, a fear or concern that it built upon the issue of traffic generated from the site as opposed to traffic generated just by the residential use, which would also be bolstered by the traffic engineer's report relative to traffic generated by residential use as opposed to commercial use. Relative to the concentration, the coverage of the buildings is, if you look on on the chart and relative to the required and proposed, it's 17.4% and the potential coverage is 30%. So there is, for a 3.326 acre site, the actual coverage of the 3 proposed buildings is a little bit more than 50% of the maximum building coverage under the zone.
No, but I understand, but we're also not taking that size property in the abstract. I mean, we have to think about where is it?
Yeah.
And where it is a problem. That's a tough area. If you pick this piece of property up and drop it someplace else in town, half the issues go away, but we're not doing that here. We have to, live in the reality of where it is. What might be okay in terms of percentage coverage for this size lot isn't the only consideration.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just, again, I know we had questions when there was a kind of a more mixed use to the property, but I think that was, again, from my perspective, that was meant more, that was a preliminary discussion. You'd hope that those kind of things would have been addressed and discussed when a full, application came in. I didn't mean, if I did, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to make it sound like I wasn't okay with that. Me personally, I was actually more in favor of that kind of project because I felt like that kind of staggered use that was a mix of some business, restaurant, whatever, as well as the residential, I thought was better because of where this is. And I thought rather than having any one use, being the consistent use on the property, I thought was better. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the traffic numbers are completely different, and when, the traffic person comes in and they say, no, this is a much less, intense use, and they run the numbers by, that's fine. But I do think, we're coming back to the project we originally had that we were concerned about the size of. And that's what we have. I mean, I know it's switching to a, 55 plus, but that's a designation of who's going to live there. That doesn't necessarily mean those people aren't coming in and out any different than someone who's 25 or 99. So I understand that might change how you, build the buildings. That's fine. I mean, obviously that's going to be important, but all I'm saying is I want to say up front that there is concern about the size in that space so that you don't leave here without me having said it. Because if it comes up as the full hearings get started, I don't want to feel like it's being a sandbag thing where you might hear, we think this is too big. And I'd rather have it said now. And then you go forward, that's completely up to you. You know what I mean? And then you convince 4 out of 5, you win. But I just want to make sure that we at least say it, or at least I said it. And, the other board members may or may not agree, I have no idea. But I just don't want to leave this, because this, I think, is where we need to tell you those kind of things, because you go out and you make a bunch of plans and, you spend a ton of money to put in a submittal, and then it gets treated like it's dead on arrival. I don't think that's fair either. So I want to rather say something up front that, there are concerns, and they're the same concerns, I think, from the original time that this was brought in. So that's all. So
I'd like to add one thing here, actually, a two-part. So Jim and I have gone through numerous scenarios with this property. We know that this is one of the last larger pieces on this corridor with close proximity to 495. I can say that the commercial development, it's tricky because, you start to bring in, let's say, a Starbucks into this site that has it's on the fringe, it has the proximity to 495. but then it starts to increase the volumes that impact these areas in the morning. The volume increases were essentially 25% greater than this type of development. So that in itself has its own issues related to volumes. And then it comes to, do you start, let's say one of the other slabs might want to be a big box restaurant, national restaurant. What kind is it? Is it one that generates volumes for 200 seats worth of restaurants? Is it one that is divided up into a couple different retail? So it became a complex trying to narrow down exactly what do you do with the property from a commercial standpoint. One thing I can add, that the over 55 we thought would be appropriate for this site because, well, first of all, it's not going to be a big generator of children to the school system and have an impact to the town in that manner. But it also has nice walkability to local areas, heading towards 495, where you could actually walk from this site and actually go and have a meal or do something in the evening. What I can say is that we're going to need to hire the right architect, have this project look the right way, and have this board endorse the look and feel of this development, but adding this over 55 development to its housing stock, knowing that some of the other projects that might generate more children type, and I don't want to mean that children are a bad thing here, it just has more taxing on the resources of the town. So, but we have gone through a lot of discussion about various proposals, and this seems to be the most realistic for this site, that's all. The nice thing, I want to add one thing. Commercial developments typically just want to be on slabs. And when you do that, it becomes more complex because we're a terraced property with the elevation difference like Mr. Ryder was recognizing from Main Street to the rear. And the nice thing about parking garage is that it takes that away. So you can actually use that space, get the benefit of parking, and with an over 55 development, that'll become a very important amenity for people living in those buildings to have vehicles that can be separated from the elements. So I just wanted to.
So then I'll say this, and again, I'm probably the easiest person to deal with on this stuff, to be honest. I mean, you guys have come in here enough times, so I'm not trying to be difficult, but come in with that information then, all of that. Because I've said it enough times in here that, when we have these things in front of us, we also have to consider them against the alternatives. And if the alternatives are worse and make less sense, we have to take that into consideration and whether or not we want to approve what's in front of us.
Right.
But you have to help us too then.
Sure.
And explain that, because all someone's going to see is what's in front of us right now as the project that comes in. There are alternative things that could go here. People have to take that into consideration. So you need to be prepared to discuss that then when you come in and say, this is why you want this, as opposed to B, C, and D. So, because you're going to get, people are going to show up. They showed up last time, they're going to show up again. So, the argument has to be there for you to explain why this, not that, and why we should want this, not those.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense, because one of the one of the concerns was it was going to be an affordable housing development in my backyard, essentially.
Okay,
Was
well,
one
I
of
mean,
them.
that may be, I hate that answer for the following reason, because people keep confusing 40B, like
I
affordable
understand,
developments,
yeah.
with Section 8 housing. That is not the same thing, and that's part of our problem and why we have such a hard time doing affordable housing sometimes, is because people can't keep the two straight.
Right.
That's fine, but it was also because it shifted into a LIP program, which shifted who was dealing with this completely. We were no longer dealing with it. It
Right.
became a Board of Selectmen issue.
Sure.
And that's not how these are typically done, so that also, I think, added to the confusion amongst people as to what was going on. All I'm saying is, when this comes in, you gotta be able to discuss the alternatives and why nobody wants the alternatives as opposed to what's being presented. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, thank you.
All right, so Dave, else have anything else they wanted to add before?
Real quick question. You showed us 3 boxes on the plan. Inside these, the area, are the condo site going to have any amenities?
Yeah, we're discussing doing some exercise rooms down in the lower levels. Some small sitting areas.
Meeting
Yes.
rooms?
What's that?
Meeting rooms?
Yeah, sitting area that could be, someone could have a little birthday party down there.
Yeah, all right.
But we definitely want to have a small exercise room for each one. And we want these to have a higher end feel to them, to appeal to folks that are over 55 who still want some luxuries that they're wanting. And having an exercise facility or a small meeting room is an amenity that we're commonly seeing those now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Rod?
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned, obviously, a 55 and over doesn't have the impact on a school. However, it has a greater impact on police and fire. So there is an offset. There is an offset whether you're impacting a school. So that is, when, as Mr. Johnson stated, having all those key points. I understand this is just a preliminary graphic, two-dimensional graphic. And as he mentioned, the number of units, that was a concern. It will be a concern again. I didn't want to touch that now, but as Mr. Johnson brought it up, I think 75 units there is too many there. That's just my opinion. But you may have other people with that same opinion. That was the same opinion the last time. So as Mr. Johnson stated, you may want to look at what your number is that makes it, palatable to the neighbors as well as the board and anyone else that's going to speak for or against it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lane, anything else? Mr. Vitale?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess one of my comments is, right from the get-go, you're looking for a waiver to go 4.5 stories versus what's allowed, 2.5 stories. So my question to you is, why can't we do it according to the bylaw, 2.5 stories?
Well, I mean, the bylaw provides for the ability to build more than 2.5 stories. That, if there was to be a prohibition, then there wouldn't be any language contained within the zoning bylaws to give an applicant an opportunity to request, for that. And, from our perspective, it would be, if you look at the footprint of the building relative to the potential layout of the buildings, for coverage, so we're given less, we're taking, 17% as opposed to 30%. And, there's a reason to allow for this, request for additional height. And, again, it's there for a reason. And all the language within the bylaw is there for a purpose. And if it's there, it's then clearly not for the purpose of being a prohibition. It's there for a reason of, applying it when, what we would think makes sense relative to the layout of the footprint of the buildings themselves. So that's, I guess that would be the response in the sense it's not a prohibition, it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And I'd say additionally to that, one of the things that we afford by doing the parking garages is it works with the grades. So as you're working your way to the rear of the property, you can gain the 10 feet separation by having a parking garage underneath, which becomes an important amenity for folks. And that takes care of one of your stories right there. So, and then you end up with just 2 tiers above it, which brings the total number down significantly. So adding those additional 2 more levels allows for a development of this size to be able to be constructed and do this project because they're getting the right amount of units and working with the terrain. because the parking garages get you parking, and it actually creates more value in the units themselves, so the units are going to have.
I just have a problem when you come in all of a sudden and are looking for waivers right from the get-go, rather than the building them to spec, according to our bylaw, that's all.
Yeah,
All set,
no.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
All right, so again, I'll sum it up with this. I'm not saying that I'm against what you're presenting in terms of number. All I'm saying is be prepared to explain it beyond just saying, we want 75.
Right.
It's got to be able to be explained and why it's the right project versus the other versions or any other versions.
Sure.
That, we may prefer a lot less for traffic reasons, for aesthetic whatever it is. But there's going to have, this is a special spot, obviously. This
Yeah.
has kind of gone around. It's going to require more than just simply putting in the paperwork and holding our hearing, obviously. So I think be prepared for that when you come in, that, you have to say more than just, the town engineer asked for these 3 things. Like, there's more of a sell job to this, to explain why this size, this design, whatever, is the right version of why that's what should go on the property. That's all, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because I
just-
think that's what we are gonna hear when people come up. There needs to be more than just simply, because I want to. It's because you gotta tell it, we want it that way, as opposed to something else. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, when we first started out the affordable housing project, we started out 120 units.
Well, that's what I asked at the beginning, if that was what the
And
number
then we
was
came-
originally.
And then we came down to 77. And we were doing wonderful until we went to the selectmen.
So
now,
this
today-
is what I mean, though, like, when you're explaining why this versus something else. Now, obviously, the 120 version was the one that was presented before, had all the uproar that it had, then this is something different than that. So rather than going from where you might have ended up, explain where you started. Because we've had this with the other projects, because as we go along, we started at 20-something units, and we've come down to 16 or 18 or whatever it is. But people have to remember, where did we start?
Right.
Where did we end up? And why? You know what I mean? So that's part of what I'm talking about, when you're explaining why this project versus B, C, or D, that's part of it. So that's what I'm saying. So when you come in, you're explaining too, our previous design had 120 units. This one's 77. Good, bad, we'll make that decision later, but that's an important piece of information for those who are saying, how is this different than what we didn't like before? So,
Mr. Chairman, one more thing is, we proposed 3 buildings like this, and it's 17.4%, and we're allowed up to 30% lot coverage. If we did the 30% lot coverage, it'd be 1 L building, 1 big building, and would be under the 30% at 2.5 stories. That's what, this would give us more green space.
again,
And more-
this is what I'm talking about, though. This is the stuff that, when it comes time, this is why you explain this versus that. That's what I'm talking about, though, because without that information, everybody sees just what you have in front, and the immediate reaction is gonna be, no. Well, okay, but then what's gonna come back might be what you just described. Might people like that much less than this? So that's what I'm talking about. So when you come in, be prepared to discuss what the alternatives would have been and why we want this one, or why we should want this one versus any of those, that's all. So like you just explained, that might be something no one would want, a building that looks like that on the property. That's fine, but that's part of the argument, you know what I mean? So when you're trying to sell this project, you have to also, explain what the alternatives we could be looking at are. That's all I'm saying, at least from my perspective. Everybody else has their own opinion, that's fine, so, all right?
the input from everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on to agenda item C, 30 Ames Pond Drive, 30 Ames Pond LLC, land disturbance permit. Do I have a motion to waive the public reading? A motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Gentlemen, once you get settled, if you just state your names for the record, the floor will be yours.
Take a chair.
Jim Hanley, Civil Design Consultants.
Arnie Martell, applicant.
Mark Ginsberg, applicant.
Dick Schuko, representing the applicant.
Pleasure, yours, gentlemen.
Great. So again, Jim Hanley with Civil Design Consultants. We're here in front of you tonight for a land disturbance permit application.
You want to just pull that over?
Sure. At 300 Ames Pond Drive. So why are we here tonight? Because essentially in your, I think it's your stormwater and erosion control bylaw, you have a provision that if someone disturbs in excess of 40,000 square feet, they have to come to the planning board, present the project, and get the planning board's blessing. So I'm just going to kind of walk through existing conditions, what we're proposing, and kind of where we stand as far as local in state review right now.
You want to just bring it close, because it's not picking you up.
Even more? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So again, 300 Ames Pond LLC, Mark Ginsberg and Arnie Martell, the applicants. The location is all the way at the end of Ames Pond Drive, tax map 66, lot 12. Currently, right now, Ames Pond Drive is a private drive. It's constructed all the way out to basically where our proposed earthwork will begin. It's in the zoning district office research. Total site area is 31 acres. We have access off of right directly onto Ames Pond Drive and then onto Andover Street. We have a number of resource areas on site. Obviously, Ames Pond is one. The bordering vegetated wetland that's associated with that, as well as an isolated finger up the middle of the parcel is another BVW. And with that, we have the 25-foot, the 50-foot, and the 100-foot buffers. Slopes on site are moderate, with a high of approximately 176 feet in elevation, down to around 150 plus or minus along the shoreline of the pond. The existing cover out there is a mixture between, what's the access, which is the driveway, which would be impervious. There's also a staging area, maybe 100 feet in, give or take, on the westerly side that has some material stockpiled out there right now. And the remaining portion of it is woods. So as far as the proposed conditions go and some of the specifics that go along with that, essentially what we're doing is we're proposing to perform some earthwork operations to prep for future developments and develop these pad sites. With that, a couple of things that were kind of the beginning of the design and how we were going to try to lay this out was that obviously the town has a 25-foot no disturbance buffer. We offset that line 26, 27 feet all the way around and designed around that. So that 25 feet with any wetland will be no disturbance whatsoever. We also are proposing a 25-foot natural buffer along the abutters property lines. So if you can see,
Jim.
so along here, wherever we have a property line that's shared with an abutter, we're proposing a 25-foot natural buffer, as well as 15 feet of additional screening, landscape screening. What that screening looks like is, if you look at sheet C3, wanted to put this in section just so you can get a sense of it, because obviously we're sensitive to the impact to the abutters. So essentially we have a 25-foot disturbed buffer. 15-foot wide berm where we'll have 12 to 14-foot high evergreen trees planted 15 feet on center to try to provide as much of a visual buffer as we can. Continuing along with this, so of the 31 plus or minus acres, we're proposing to disturb approximately half of that. So it's about 14 acres of total area of disturbance. So really the construction sequencing is place erosion controls along the perimeter of any of the resource areas. Then we have these diversion swales that are essentially along the perimeter of the earthwork. And these diversion swales are proposed to capture flow off of the earthwork and provide a place for sediment to settle before it discharges out to the resource areas. So we don't have an increase in peak discharges, and we don't have, and what we're trying to do is look at this from an erosion and sediment control perspective. Obviously, then would be tree cutting and stumping and regrading activities. Essentially everything on this side here, and then on sheet C1, which would be over here, those two areas make up the 14 acres. Regrading activities and then replacing with 4 inches of loam seed to eventually stabilize the site. That's kind of the big picture. I'm not sure if you guys have anything else to offer, but.
Not at this time.
All right. Let's bring it to the board. Start with Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. So roughly 25,000 cubic yards. What are you dropping the grade by in there, your lowest spot?
So the highest point on the site, or the deepest cut, I should say, is this area right here. That's about 14 feet, so that's fairly significant. On average across the site, it's closer to about 6 feet if you look at the total area divided by the earthwork.
Most of it along the back Cardigan Road is roughly 6 feet, give or take?
Plus or minus, yeah. There's a knoll, if you look at that sheet C2, there's a good-sized knoll right here. It is really kind of unique to the property, but that's kind of where the largest cut goes.
Yeah, what we did, Mr. Ryder, is if you go back and look at the plan that was approved for the office building and the parking area, that's pretty much the grade you have to be at, so, to do it, so it's not like we're going any below that grade. We have to make sure that all our drainage systems will ultimately work when something's built and that sewer can work and everything. So basically, we're kind of at that same grade from that.
Your finished grade will be at that,
right in that area.
that datum where you need to be? Okay. And a couple other key points, and I mean, I'll be honest, I'm gonna live in that route where that trucks are gonna go. I dealt with it the last time. North Street was a runway of trucks being hauled out from Andover Street every Saturday for about 6 hours, every Saturday for about 3 months. It was horrible. I couldn't even let my kids go out to get the mail, and I'll be honest, and there was many complaints with that. So that raises a big concern with that many trucks with, 800 to 1,200 trips.
They were over 18
hours.
months.
That's fine, I'm just saying, over 18 months, but, okay, it can be heavy this time. We might not do anything in the wintertime, but, what's your window, what do you anticipate for?
Well, we're not even saying, through you, Mr. Chair, we're not even saying we're going down North Street either.
Okay.
Not sure where the materials are going to end up eventually there, but
Okay.
we're going to target more the 93s, 495s, and Route 38s, come down the secondary roads.
Okay, all right.
We're not sure that's down the road once we get it all,
Okay.
established in there for filming.
And that's a concern, and that was my next question. Where is this material going?
We don't have an exact home for it just yet. We just know we're going to export about 25,000 yards out of there.
Okay.
If I could take a step back, so we submitted this and we received a review letter last week from DPW. In general, well, let me go back again. So late last week, we responded in writing with a revised set of plans. In general, we have no issues with any of his comments. We just don't know some of the specifics yet until we're actually out on the site, where the dirt's gonna go, and where we're gonna put it, and how we're gonna get there. Those are the things that we need to know before I can respond. So some of those things, I think we're gonna have to try to at least condition into it and address prior to construction. The other piece I just kind of want to provide the board is, and I'm sure Mr. Ryder is aware, is that we just looked at the average daily trips published by DOT in the area, just to try to give a perspective on how much impact we're going to have on the traffic. So we anticipate somewhere around 1,200 truck trips to excavate and move off-site. DOT publishes along Andover Street there somewhere between 17,000 and 20,000 trips a day. So it just kind of gives you a little bit of a perspective on how much volume and how much impact and whatnot. So just like in 5 years.
We generally don't plan on putting a big truck in operation there. It may be 2 or 3 trucks at a time.
Okay.
So it's not going to, once again, be something's going to try and get done overnight.
Okay.
It'll be over the course of several months, and we'll be cognizant of the neighborhoods, and we will discuss with the town the desired routes we want to take when it comes time, depending where the material is going to go.
Yep.
So it'll be a further discussion down the road. But yeah, it's a little premature to say where it's going to go, and it may be broken up to different areas at a time too. So.
Mr. Chairman, do you have a copy of civil design letter of August 2nd?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay, good, I just wanted to make sure you had that.
No, absolutely. And and I understand it's, over a 12 to 18 month, but if you happen to find a home for it and someone says, I need it in 3 months, it can be moved. It's.
But we'll weigh those concerns in though too also. We don't want, we may say it can't be done in 3 months, it has to be done in 4 months. Or we just can't do the job for them there. So it's a lot of variables when you get that close, and we're talking months down the road over here. So till we see what the markets are for material and where it can go, then we'll know better at that point in time.
Okay. But
Just
those.
wanted you to see paragraph.
No, absolutely. I'm just, some of those are some of the concerns that not only myself and I'm sure other people in the audience are going to have about that route that you're going to take, and, it was raised in Mr. Hardiman's letter as well.
Absolutely.
I'm all set for now. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Fratelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess one question I have is, have we asked these questions of other developers as far as how many trips and how much material is coming out and how many, the duration of the project, total volume? I don't recall us asking that question.
Well, one of the reasons might be because I can't remember the last time we had a land disturbance one for a bigger project. It's been some time.
Okay.
So that's probably why you're not thinking of it.
I haven't really seen many of the questions, and
I'm not sure when
There is, the last one is St.
St.
Mary's, the
Mary's,
open
yeah.
space,
Yeah,
but
that's
there is restriction on that.
Right.
So,
okay. And so I guess my question is, you're just going to clear the land, get it pad ready, see what you have, then go forward from there, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's easy to market the property when you can see what you have there because of the topography. You can't get a clear vision of the overall site there. So it being opened up, leveled off, seated up there, you bring perspective, buyers in there or uses in there. It's just easy to market the property, have a pad-ready site.
Good. I'll set, Mr. Chairman, right now.
Mr. Fowler.
Well, you'd be surprised when I say I think I'm all set. I kind of knew what was going on when I reviewed the plan over the weekend. We've been looking at the site for over a dozen years for various items, and I think from a town's perspective, I think what lesson the town probably learned with St. Mary's Cemetery is a little more observation by us, and when I mean us, not the planning board, but the town, to make sure that it's not doing what St. Mary's did. And I can't see it doing that because St. Mary's was, how many thousand?
That was probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of yards.
Right, it was.
25,000.
It was nickels to $1,000, and if that makes any sense, but, no. And it was almost like, when they were doing that, they forgot about the town. I hate to say it, they did, they forgot about the town. I don't see that happening here. So I think with what we've got so far submitted, I like the berms, I like the evergreens on the areas near the houses on Cardigan Road, and the land on Andover makes sense. We'll see if what everybody else feels. Thank you.
Mr. Delaney.
Yeah, I go along with just about everything. The road that you're gonna be taking the dirt out on? Is it gonna be Andover Street?
Well, eventually you're gonna have to go on Andover Street there, but from there you can go right or left, right to 93 or left to 495. So
The only,
depending where it's gonna go.
the only complaint with St. Mary's was when the trucks were coming in and going out, the entrance of the place, the dirt would fall off the truck and get on the street.
We'll
You know,
pay.
just, that was one or two of the complaints that we got. And as long as we can address that, so that the amount of dirt that ends up on, like Andover, 133 or Andover Street is taken care of, then I have no problems with any,
I think part of that's good housekeeping, and,
which I'm sure with these
yeah,
gentlemen will take
they've
place.
got a track record, but we've also got construction entrance detailed on the plan, so we're aware that that can be an issue in trying to address it.
All right, pretty much on board with the same as everybody else, just, and again, some of the specifics aren't gonna be settled until you have more specifics, so that's fine. I mean, you'll have to turn that information in, you know, when you're ready to actually start, you know, where it's going, how much is going when. We're not gonna know that now, so that's fine. I'll note Mr. Fowler's comment of, you know, concern with the fact that, you know, this actually has some benefit to, you know, while you're doing your work, even to Andover, that we actually took that into consideration. It's nice if that happens the other way around, but, you know, doesn't ever seem to, but that's fine. The fact that you guys did that, fine, whatever. Other than that, I'm all set. Open it up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns? Yep. If you go up, you just state your name and your address for the record. The floor is yours.
Bob O'Brien, 110 Cardigan Road. Couple of questions. We're talking about just removal of dirt at this meeting tonight, is that correct? And that they want to level off the land and see what they have left to build on, is that correct?
Correct.
Will there be any rock removed or any dynamiting of the ledge back there, or is it we just talking dirt?
We're just talking dirt at this time.
Okay. The other question I have is, what do you not anticipate, but what will be the actual hours of operations, digging the dirt, removing the dirt, hours and days?
Well, we're gonna obviously abide by the town's bylaw. I think it's Monday through Saturday, 7 to 5 p.m., I believe.
Okay, so
Whatever
it's,
the bylaws are, we're gonna stay.
so it's Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m.,
I
correct?
can't guarantee, maybe
Okay.
later. It won't be earlier than 7 a.m. It
All
could
right,
be later.
so right now, in that property, you have a big mound of dirt that's a lot of it's debris and refuge from the Tewksbury Country Club that I assume. Is that correct?
That's an assumption.
Okay, it's an assumption. Okay, so there's trucks there that are operating before 7 a.m. That's not an assumption, that's a fact.
I don't know that for sure, but if it
Okay,
is,
I know it for sure. Come by someday.
Okay.
I'll buy you coffee, we can go
I'll
out.
give you my phone number when we leave. You can call me up.
Okay, they're in. The other thing is, what are you're saying the hours of operations are 7 a.m. What hours are the trucks allowed to run? Those trucks, you can hear the diesel trucks there, whatever they're doing, 6:15, 6:30, 6 o'clock a.m. The trucks are running. There's a noise impediment. There's pollution impediment from the diesel trucks. So when you say 7 a.m., does that mean just when you start removing the dirt or when the trucks come in? Or what does the town say about that?
They won't open the door till 7 a.m.
Excuse me,
They
the
will not
case?
open the door on the trucks till 7 a.m.
Okay. That's on record, okay? Fine.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the town's rule, so you.
Town rule, okay.
And if it's not, please call me. I'll give you my phone number. If they do that, I'll make sure
Okay, no
it's taken care
problem. I
of.
just wanted to get it up in the open. Let's, want to do everything above board and do fair and do reasonable to all parties involved.
Absolutely.
The other question is, as they're preparing to remove the dirt and they're probably building large mounds of dirt, what protection is going to be from the dirt blowing, whatever debris you have near the dirt blowing into the neighbors' yards? Is there any type of way to keep that from blowing? You're going to be having mounds of dirt. How is that going to be protected from blowing into the neighbors' yards? Our pools, our windows, our properties?
Well, we're gonna haul it out of there, so hoping there's not gonna be a heck of a lot stockpiled there. There may be some, but if there is stockpiled there, if it's gonna be there for any length of time, we'll loom it and we'll seed it.
And also, we're obligated to file a SWIP with EPA. It's something that DPW wants to look at, and there's a dust prevention plan as part of that, so
And once again, if there is dust blowing around there, you'll have my contact information, you give us a call, we'll take care of it right away.
Okay. And you said you hope
what?
hope that the dirt will be moved quickly. You hope.
Well, that's right, but we also show on the plan there's a stockpile provisions there, so some may be stockpiled there for temporary, not permanently, obviously, so.
Okay.
If it is there for any length of time, we'll make it the.
Do you have any commitment on that time rather than you do the best you can?
I would say in 12 to 18 months.
No, I mean, if you have a large mound, how long
Well,
should
once
we
again-
expect it to be
Well,
there?
there's a stockpile there, it's gonna be there for future development for the site there. We will
Okay.
stabilize that stockpile,
That's
so it's
fair.
not blowing dust.
And there's a lot of wetlands back there, little vernal ponds and stuff and pools that have been disturbed in the past with prior people trying to develop that land. Is it this planning board's responsibility or the conservation board's to make sure that none of these existing water tables are violated or removed or covered up?
So just for the record, we just worked with Conservation to receive a notice of resource area delineation. So what that means is they've looked at our plan and where we're indicating where the limit of the wetland is. They had their own professional consultant walk it, and after a little bit of negotiation, we've agreed upon a line that defines that limit.
Okay. And one other question with the timing of these meetings. To this meeting tonight, there seems to be a lot more professional people than abutters. And this is critical to a lot of people, the Cardigan Road area, North Street area, all those streets. Is there any reason why these meetings are held in the heavy vacation period and also while people are trying to get their kids off to school and ready to school? I know I received another letter Saturday. There's another meeting next Wednesday. And why is this all being boxed in a expedient matter of time? I believe you, Mr. Ginsburg, are you Mr. Ginsburg?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Ginsburg said it's going to be 12 to 18 months. Understood, fair. But why are we boxing all these critical meetings in a short period of time when it is a heavy vacation period for the abutters? Can anyone answer that?
This is, hold on one second. This is our public held meeting. The dates of our meetings are published at the beginning of the year. We take applications as they come in. We aren't dictating when the applications come in.
Okay.
Once they come in, we have to hear them. We're not gonna, so again, the timing is the petitioners turn in their petition, we put it on our agenda. If abutters need to be notified, but for whatever the project is, they're notified, they're made aware of when the meeting is, what time it is, and as you did, you can come down here and have your say.
I appreciate that. Now, how far is your agenda set in advance? So
You
if I
can see
went-
the rest of our, not the agenda, you can see the dates of our meetings
Oh, the dates of your meetings, yeah.
are all set. The agendas come out, when do we put them out? 2 weeks prior, as well as when we leave here, you know if things have been continued to the next meeting.
Yeah.
We have no control if a petitioner wants to come in and say, as we have this evening, that they want to continue again, so we don't actually meet tonight, well, we won't discuss it tonight, and it'll go to the next meeting. We have no control over that. It's on the agenda, it's public, it's on the website, it's published. I'm not really sure what more there would be, or anybody else does any more than that. Those are the requirements, that's how they're listed.
Okay. That's all I have right now. Thank you for your time.
Chairman,
Yes.
just one other thing. You brought up the vacation area. That's why we only have one meeting in July and one meeting in August. So you don't interfere with family vacations.
Well, can I direct a question to you, Mr. Fowler? You brought up something about St. Mary's on that construction site. And you talked about the volume of dirt coming out in the traffic and maybe some of the less than clean conditions. You said you don't expect that to happen with this one. Why did you say that?
I think the town, you didn't hear me then. I said, I hope the town learned its lesson so that it would be done in a manner that it won't have these problems.
So not just in this case, this construction site, but what about in future construction sites? What if it doesn't happen? What are the penalties or the consequences to the developer or the trucking company or things like
They're
that.
responsible for the cleanup of the road.
And who?
They are responsible
Okay.
for the cleanup of the road.
And who patrols that or watches it?
The DPW.
The DPW, okay. All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, sir, can you show me in the plan where you live on Cardigan Road?
Can you see this one? This is probably right here. That looks like me right there.
Okay.
Any particular reason why you asked me that question?
I'm just curious to see where you are in relation to where the work's gonna be done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any questions, comments, or concerns? Since she's actually already moving to the podium, I'll take her, and then you can go next.
She's the neighbor, she's like.
Sorry, I'm Teresa Shilley, 90 Cardigan Road. My only concern is, I'm worried about the berm that you guys are talking about. The elevation of my lot, I looked it up, I think we're like about 138 feet, and the proposed area that they're looking to level is about 158 feet, so you're talking like a 20-foot differential with trees on top of it. What am I gonna see from the back? What am I gonna see when I look out in my backyard? I wanna know, what am I gonna see? Just a sloping berm? Like, is it gonna have grass on it? Like, what, who's gonna maintain it? Like, that's my
It'll be
biggest
a
concern.
natural mulch on there, and,
There's a tree, I don't think she saw that.
well, there's gonna be trees, there's gonna be trees there too on top of the berm. And the only reason we put the berm there, I don't have to put the berm there, but it gives you more height for more of a screening down the road. But the trees we plant there are evergreens, so it'll be a shaded evergreen tree that stays green year round.
The tree.
The tree.
The back of it. What am I
I'll
gonna
probably
see?
put
The-
mulch.
Yeah, this part.
Which is,
Yeah, so what is this gonna be though? Because that's what I'm gonna see when I look out in my backyard. Are you sure?
well, to answer the question, it'll be wood chips there, wood chips around the trees. There'll be wood chips.
Okay, so on the side,
Yeah.
and somebody
And then-
will take care of that?
Well, no, because then it'll just grow naturally after that. But we want to make it a natural buffer when it's all said and done.
Okay.
Along with the additional trees we're going to plant there.
Okay, and any work on like, not to say security, but a lot of the people from the buildings that are already existing walk through and walk onto our
Yeah,
street,
well,
like
what-
walk through our yards,
Yeah,
like
well, that's coming to an end.
do their,
Yeah.
the walking in the afternoon. Is there anything?
Well, we're trying
you
to,
know,
we have
kinda-
signs posted, we have a fence out front there. I'm going to put additional fencing out front there also, because we don't want them walking on our property either. So we're going to add some additional security there when we get in there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Alley, 100 Cardigan Road. I thought this meeting was just about the earthwork portion of it. It seems it's degenerated a little bit into what the setbacks are going to be and this and that and everything else. And I kind of wish that you would hold off on your opinion as to whether or not a 25-foot setback is good or not until we kind of see what the proposed plan is that they are going to do there. That's just one general comment.
Just to clarify, that's the setback that's involved in this work. It's not, that has nothing to do with any project
okay.
that might go there.
Fine, okay, all right, I misunderstood. The other thing is about dust control. I mean, anybody that's been on a construction site knows that the biggest generator of dust is a truck moving back and forth. Is there, I mean, shouldn't there be something in this approval that requires them to keep the dust down, to keep the site wet?
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, you know, if they're coming with, potentially within 25 feet of our property with this clearing operation, they can generate an awful lot of dust.
We'll be using water trucks and calcium and dust control measures there. And we're gonna we're not gonna just open the whole entire property up and let it sit there and seed it. We're gonna have lumen seed as we go along too. So we'll get a sequence plan put together at some point, once we get a better idea what we're gonna do in there. And we'll circulate around to the board and the DPW there. Let's carve out different sections at a time. I really don't, other than cutting all the trees at once, but as far as actually grubbing and loom removal there, that'll take place as we go along there, and then we'll reseed and try and get the dust, down that way also, so.
I mean, calcium chloride or, whatever it takes so that every truck that's running by isn't generating a dust storm.
Yeah. Like I said, we're gonna loom it right away. We don't want any problems down there either, so we wanna get it stabilized as fast as possible there, so.
Yeah, well.
And once again, if there's any dust blowing around or debris blowing around, let us know. We'll take care of it right away.
Okay. Is that good enough for the board?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Nope. No, I'm just kidding. You gotta wait until everybody else goes.
Hi, Ronald Shilley, 90 Cardigan Road. So I just want to kind of reiterate what my neighbor, Mr. Alley, just his concern about the setbacks. Now, I know that, Mr. Johnson, you said this is just for this project. I guess in general, my concern would be that whatever is put in here for this land disturbance permit would stay permanently. And my concern would be not knowing what the hell is going to go in there beyond this, that may not be enough as a direct abutter to address my concerns as a direct abutter.
But if the project came forward, that would be something that would be discussed as part of the public hearing.
I just wanted, I guess on record, just as a direct abutter, just kind of reiterate my concern.
We're prepared for any future permitting there. If we need more of a landscape buffer at that time, we'll add the landscape buffer, which would be better than, because one's going to be evergreens, more of a full screen type buffer. So we'll add any type of buffer that would maybe be needed for any type of future development, should it be needed at that point in time.
Right. Just, again, because this is just for the work that's being presented now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's what would be put in or requested as part of a project when that came in, whatever it might be.
Sure, and I understand that. I just wanted to kind of get on record as a direct
fine.
abutter. I'm like right there, 90 Cardigan, so I just wanted to make my concerns.
No problem.
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you.
Question now.
If you, again, because you're going up again, just again, your name and your.
Bob O'Brien, 110 Cardigan. Do we anticipate, or would there be a lot of trees removed or disturbed as they do this evaluation of what the elevation of lands and stuff are? Would you be cutting down a lot of trees? Because the trees there are beautiful, number one. It's a beautiful area. Again, being a butter, we don't want to see, we want to minimize what is disturbed and what is not disturbed. The trees are very important to us. And number two is, I brought up, and Ken brought up the element of dust and dirt blowing around, and I think trees are a nice natural wall to prevent that stuff from, help preventing the flow of dust and dirt onto our property. So would there be a lot of care and concern, or just be a massive, tearing down the trees and...
Well, unfortunately, because of the topography out there, the elevation grades as such that, the trees, it's going to be cleared pretty much what you see in the plan there. That's why we're going to put the 40-foot buffer of natural and planted landscape there. And it'll be loomed and seeded, so it'll be grass there. It'll be like a big field out there when it's all said and done. But, if I could keep trees, I would keep trees there, and we will keep trees as we see fit as we're going in there, working there. But once again, the topography, I'm not sure if you can read the plan out there, it's very undulating. And to get a level area there, you don't want to leave a tree in a compromised situation where it can blow over and cause damages to other trees or our property. So it's unfortunate, but yes, the trees have to come out of there to a pad-ready site in there.
Would there be any consideration, there was talk of a 40-foot buffer, would there be any consideration of maintaining as much of the natural trees there?
It'd be cheaper for me to leave a 50-foot natural buffer there, but I can assure you that the money we'll spend, which will probably be $100,000 or so, putting trees there, there'll be a much better screen, year-round screen at that, because the trees that are there, especially when you start opening up a thickly wooded area like that, they're oaks or maples, they have no vegetation down low. Where I'm putting 14, 16-foot trees on a berm that's going to be vegetated year-round, you'll have a better stream there when I'm done than you have there
So
right now.
your intent is
believe it
to
or not.
put new trees on the burn?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that whole tree line there, the heavy boulder tree line there.
Yeah, I'll have to get, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Questions, comments, or concerns? Going once, twice? All right, bring it back to the board. Does the board have any other questions or comments at this time?
I think just part of, some of these concerns are brought up in terms of maintenance of the site, responsibility of any cleanups, emergency contacts, all of those listed with the DPW as a standard practice. Go as far as, when you get into it, maybe look at, you're going to have a sweeper on site, maybe sweeping the intersection once a week, every Friday before the weekend. Just stay on top of the site, those things like that go a long way. So we're not getting a call back.
We'll be there sweeping, we'll have a pre-construction meeting with DPW before a couple gets moved in there, so our trees there start getting cutted. So when we do that, all that will be outlined at that point in time.
Standard, just have that in case there is something, especially for the residents, they have the director, they can call the DPW. And
I'll give them all my numbers, you can call me directly.
easiest way to handle it so that you have one point of contact.
Sure.
Yeah, for, my throat's a little scratchy. Very seldom, but probably, I don't want to work on a Saturday, so it'll probably be zero trucking. I had one day of a bad day of trucking years ago. I made it up to the neighbors, but most likely there's no, unless there's an emergency, we need 10 loads or something like that, but there's no sense in, you can't get people to work during the week, never mind Saturdays, but, I doubt it very, very much if we work any Saturdays at all.
I think, and I vaguely remember when that happened too, if there is gonna be Saturday work, if you're able to give the abutters just a heads up, it turns out like that's one of those weekends they're having their graduation party or whatever, just so they know it's coming.
I'm not doing it in reverse. If they have a party, they don't want us working there.
That's fine,
Because we're gonna forget, we could be away,
Right.
it's something they're working, I don't know if say, gee, she told me to call me on a Saturday. But certainly, if any abutter has any concerns for a specific weekend, or any day for that matter there, they wanna keep it quiet, we shut it down for the day for them.
Yep, so I think that just, again, like as Mr. Ryder put it, goes a long way, so throw it out there, so that's fine. All right, anything else from anyone? All right, what is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to close the hearing.
Motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the request for the land disturbance permit.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the land disturbance permit as submitted.
I'd like to add a couple of things.
Okay, I was just going to add,
Yeah, go ahead.
just, to follow up on some of the residents as they spoke tonight, that we can put some of those things, as I stated, emergency contact, a maintenance program as part of that with the DPW, pre-construction meeting when you start, potentially let something out to the abutters, okay, we're commencing on this day. So all of a sudden, it's not, 2 days before Thanksgiving and they're going in. At least give them a notice when they're going to be start construction, and that'll be part of the plan as well as the truck route. Once you have an idea of where it's going.
Yep.
I think, Mr. Fowler, do you have anything else?
I'm all set. He just read my mind.
And just the one you just mentioned too, is that you'll, as part of that notification, that they get that information of, let us know if there's something going on, that information, but that's it. All right, all right, so we got a motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Good luck, gentlemen.
Good luck.
All right, moving on to agenda item D, 1583 Andover Street, site plan special permit continued from July 15th.
Girls going out?
Just yourself? Oh, okay. Oh, there.
Yeah, right. I had the advantage of taking this agenda with me first. I'm gonna miss her.
I'm going to wait for Mr. Delaney to come back.
Yeah, that's fine, we'll wait.
I have a revised, an updated plan I want to hand out.
Yeah, if you want to just do that while he's out.
And I think that's funny, I knew she was doing it. Steve told me. So I was in there 3 times, and I put my mouth shut. I didn't say a word. But my,
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's fine, we got off very easy the last couple of times, so we're...
Assistant pizza.
Yeah.
Must be a big pizza. Must be a big pizza.
Might be a long walk home.
Well, if we keep that back open, it'll be no problem.
Exactly. That saves me about a 3-minute walk.
Thank you. They have applied for liquor license. Here in Mullen? Not yet. They need time.
Mr. Ryan's gonna be the read of my mind.
Gentlemen,
So
could you
good
state your
evening.
names for the record?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Matt Hammer with Landplex Engineering and Surveying, and I also have Jonathan Miller with the Daily Group. Also with the Daily Group is David Daly, who apologizes for not being able to be here this evening. Something came up with him. I'm not going to say it's an emergency, but he just wasn't able to make the meeting. And I know he truly wanted to be here for the meeting. So, so we're here on behalf of the Daily Group as our first public hearing since being before the board with a preliminary discussion, essentially talking about the same project. I don't know if it's appropriate to open both projects at the same time because we're looking at an overview plan that involves 2 properties that bookend an existing development inside of the...
5 minutes apart.
Was July the first public hearing?
No, this is, I believe, the first, it was, did we open the public hearing? I don't believe.
No, we had an informal.
It was an informal.
We had an
it was
informal one.
design.
Thank you for getting ahead.
So
canceled.
let's do this then. So,
Right.
does anybody have any
Where's the reading
issue?
of
So,
vote?
just before that though, does anybody have any issue of taking them both up at
No,
the
as
same
long as
time?
the time hasn't lapsed yet.
Oh, no, we're well past that.
That's right.
So what we'll do is, could I have a motion to waive the public reading
So moved.
on 1583 Andover Street? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. And agenda item E, which is 1625 Andover Street.
So moved.
A motion made and seconded. Do I have, anybody opposed? No. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Okay, so we'll take D and E, which is 1583 Andover Street and 1625 Andover Street at the same time, just because it's basically the same thing, and it's easier that way. So-
Yeah, thank you so much, Chairman. Yeah, so to bring us up to speed as to where we're at, we did come before the board for an informal discussion for this proposed restaurant here and this drive-through coffee shop that's located here. We've gone to an interdepartmental review meeting and received comments from all the various departments. We received all those comments, and then we felt as though it was necessary to continue or not open the first meeting that we had, which was the last meeting. And then I believe there was a quorum issue, if I'm not mistaken, and now we're here for our first meeting. So what we have here is a proposed restaurant here. It's going to be a 1-story restaurant. I'll put up the rendering in a minute. There's going to be a main access drive off of Andover Street. The access drive will bring you into the, in front of the restaurant with parking in front with handicap spaces. parking directly across, some additional spaces over in this area, in a parking lot up in here, with a loading area next to the building. We're also going to provide a connection here to the main access drive that was previously servicing the ATM drive-through here, and there's an existing daycare facility located here. This access drive also provides access to the newly occupied building that's in the rear, which is currently occupied by Lowell 5, I think, as everybody is aware of. There was also a proposal to provide an access drive to the hotel, which is located here, and that's shown here. Additionally, as part of this project is a coffee shop here with a drive-through. And you're going to notice I have a new handout, and I think there was a little bit of confusion related to the drive-through before, because our original proposed queuing that was showing the maximum amount of cars that could be queued within this area here had all the vehicles in the middle of the lane. And I realized that even though this area is only 14 feet wide, it actually has enough room. If the vehicles are next to the window area, which most of these vehicles would be, you're trying to get as close to the window as you can when you're through the drive-through, that we're going to talk about later, that you can actually get by. So if somebody wanted to exit out, they could actually get by here. And then what this also shows is that we think that the realistic queuing for this drive-through is only going to be this amount of vehicles here, not necessarily coming all the way out Andover Street. So we're going to have that discussion a little bit later. This plan is different from what was originally submitted. I realized that I wanted to show you folks this today, and we just redid this rendering that shows an additional change here. One change that is going to happen on this project is we're no longer going to have this access drive to the hotel area.
Keep going. Okay.
We're going to have a sidewalk that goes down to this hotel, and we're going to eliminate this connection to the hotel area. The rendering has also changed, and I wish Mr. Fowler was here, because I believe he had the comment related to the protection of the patrons utilizing the outside patio area. And what we've done is we're going to have this, essentially there's going to be bollard protection inside of this veneered brick stone facade that'll meet the requirements to protect those patrons in case, you know, there is some sort of accident of some sort out in the access drive area you're commonly seeing in front of pharmacies and whatnot. You're seeing bollards in front of all the buildings now. I believe that's being generated by the insurance companies that are trying to provide protection of the people within the facility itself and have some extra protection. So this will have interior steel bollards within the wall itself. This is a change from the original rendering that was submitted with the project, with the addition of this wall. The parking for this facility here, the parking for the restaurant right now is 45 spaces within this area here. And then there's going to be 20 spaces that are going to be shared.
With 25.
25? Excuse me. So there's going to be 25 shared spaces up in this area here for all the employees of the restaurant itself. There's connection from this area with a sidewalk system that'll bring you into the site. And this is very important because the amount of seats in the restaurant is driven by the amount of parking spaces that you have available. So our 45 spaces will allow us 2.5 seats for each parking space. So that's really important that we actually have this additional space for the employees to get our number of seats up as high as we can get it based on that parking. We have comments from the engineering department and the DPW related to the site here. We've retained Kim Hausavardian, who's the traffic engineer that was the original traffic engineer for this development. He's going to be providing an updated memorandum that's going to show that that this development here is not going to impact the previously approved traffic memorandum. Because if you recall, this was a honeydew in a subway.
Right.
And the nice thing about this restaurant is that their peak offsets our peak relative to the morning activity. Okay, so in the morning, the peak for this project is the daycare, obviously, for the drop-offs in the morning. Also related to that is the ATM activity. And additionally, this coffee shop over here is going to add some peak in the morning, but this particular use here is not going to impact that morning peak. This restaurant's going to be opening up for lunch, so there'll be employees coming in probably around 10:30. Restaurant will open up it's a dual function building where they have a lighter fare, pizzas and sandwiches in a bar, and then there's also a formal restaurant. So the entire facility won't be fully operational at lunch, it'll be a lighter use. And then when this restaurant starts to get going more at the 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock time period, these uses are actually have either discontinued, being the daycare, and probably more likely the coffee shop will be a very light use later in the afternoon. But discussing this volume with the traffic engineer does not feel as though this is going to impact the previous evaluation that the traffic engineer did for the entire development before. There was an issue that came up, or question, related to the sewer, related to the development. Apparently, the town has a pump station that's having trouble keeping up with the capacity of all the sewer in this entire area. So we were surprised to hear at an interdepartmental review meeting that the sewer capacity for the town could potentially impact whether this project could even exist in terms of the amount of sewer flows coming from this facility and projects coming up in the future. That was the initial reason why we chose to continue the meeting, because we weren't sure whether the town was going to have a sewer system to actually support this project. So Mr. Hardeman has worked diligently working on the operations of the existing pump station, and we've come up with a couple different solutions that'll start to roll out in the next couple weeks related on how to facilitate the sewer flows coming out of this facility. This particular restaurant only has an additional 220 gallons worth of additional flow than what was originally approved for the Honeydew and the subway. So I consider that a very small amount of flow, but it is an additional amount of flow. The other thing is that the town didn't incorporate a moratorium on who can tie in and who cannot, related to the volumes of flow that would be introduced to the sewer system. But we're in discussions. Apparently we can increase the size of these impellers that allow you to provide more flow through the existing force main system. So we're coming up with some solutions, but it affects the site in the way that, you know, why would I permit a site if the town's not able to handle the sewer? So we've had some discussions. There's another option to also introduce the sewer. I don't know how much you want to hear about all this, but there's another solution to actually introduce the sewer in the middle of the night when the flows are lower. But I can tell you that it's an ongoing issue. It's going to continue to come up with these projects that we have here, other projects up the street, and future projects across the street. So they're coming up with a system where each project can contribute a proportionate share on volume to handle the additional volume that's coming to the existing pump station. The coffee shop. So I don't think I need to go through all the individual comments from the town engineer. I've gone through them, but most of the comments are technical in nature and weren't necessarily focused on the design of the site itself. It had to do with some drainage questions, some grease trap information that was needed, but I believe it was all technical, which we're going to go and change the plans after tonight's meeting and incorporate those into a revised plan set. The coffee shop. We changed this plan because we did realize that essentially we feel as though, even though I showed a queuing line that came all the way up here that could handle 12 or 13 vehicles, we don't feel as though we're ever going to have any more than the vehicles I'm showing here, maybe one or two occasionally, but it's for a very short period of time. One of the comments is to provide a bypass lane for the coffee shop. And where it would be nice to have, we just don't have a lot of room to afford to do that. And I think the main purpose is if somebody has an emergency and they want to get out of the queue. Well, I realize that if somebody does have an emergency, they can get by. And we can also incorporate sloped granite curbing on the side so that if somebody wants to ride up on the edge, if it's really an emergency, they can do that. Or this is such a small queuing line that if somebody has an emergency and they're honking the horn, God forbid it ever happens, I'm sure it's going to happen rarely. I've never myself seen it happen, but I can't say that it won't. People will just get themselves out of the way if there's a real emergency here. And I think that that's should be good enough in order for folks to get out here instead of trying to take up what we really need is snow storage in order to make this project work. And another comment that came up that I honestly didn't realize that this was an issue, but why can't we have snow storage on a landscaped area? As far as I know, that landscaped area is already going to have snow on it. And why shouldn't we be able to plow the snow and utilize those landscaped areas for snow storage when we've always been doing that in the past in our designs? It's the first time I've ever heard that comment be an issue, that we're going to just have a snow storage area with no landscape in it. Yes, landscaping can get damaged with snow, but in my mind, when we get a foot of snow that landscape's already got snow on it, and we're just putting more snow on top of it. So I'm sure the board knows more about that comment. I hadn't seen that comment before, but I thought that that was a comment that could really affect the design of everything, because everywhere I go around, all the landscaped areas are utilized for snow storage. And I think I can put it to the board for questions.
All right, start with Mr. Fattalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like the concepts on both buildings, but I know from firsthand that you are going to need 2 lanes of traffic in and out of the coffee shop. I see it so many times at Dunkin' Donuts when I'm there, that people don't want to wait. They're so impatient. And regardless of whether it's an emergency or not, they need an avenue to get out. So you need 2 lanes going in and coming out. So in the event somebody does not want to wait for their coffee and has to leave, they're not beeping their horn. They should be able to get in and get out from that location. So whatever you have to do as far as shrinking the building down a little bit or adding some space somewhere, there has to be 2 lanes, my opinion, going in and out for patrons.
So would you say going in and out? I was talking about 2 lanes.
Yes.
Going around here. I mean, we have an in and out here.
Yeah, I'm talking about going around.
Going around, so it's just going in and then coming out, you mean?
Yeah, if somebody's in line, queuing in line, and is not willing to wait for their coffee or for whatever reason has to exit, there needs to be 2 lanes to turn out and get out. Somehow, some way in that process. Or it's not going to work. You mean, you say beeping the horn, people are going to move. They're not going to move. You need access in the queuing lane for someone to exit out of the lane and go around. I know what you said, it's tight. It's very tight on the bottom. You said 7 feet. There's 14 feet there?
Yeah, so we have 14 feet. Well, the whole lane is 14 feet.
Right, so 7 and 7?
So this whole thing is 14 feet. It's just, it wouldn't be meant for 2 lanes of cars to be traveling around this drive, like a typical drive would be. That would be more like 20 or 22 feet. To have safe 2 lanes of vehicles navigating themselves around a corner.
And you don't have that capacity here to do that?
No. It gets too tight in the rear. But I'm not gonna sit here and say that this would be enough for that to occur. But when you're coming straight out here and you're in here and you're straightened out, now you can sneak by, okay? Yes, maybe we can make this another foot wider, maybe 2 feet wider to help with that in here.
Yeah.
But to make this fully 2 around here is just, it's really gonna.
I just don't see it working if you can't do that myself. But I think you need access for the public to get in and get out if they don't want to wait and queue in line while they're queued in line for whatever reason. So that's my opinion, right? So I know you have a number of issues outstanding with Mr. Hardeman, so hopefully you'll have them resolved at our next meeting going forward. But how far is it from the back parking lot to the restaurant for employees having to walk? Any idea? Looks pretty substantial.
Substantial? It's under a mile.
Good.
It's 400 feet, which is really, it's not that far to walk.
Yeah?
Work off a slice of pizza.
I mean, it's probably, 100 feet to the parking lot over here. So, 400 feet. A lot of these folks will be coming at 10:30 in the morning. There's not much going on around here, and they're gonna walk over to that restaurant, and it's 400 feet. That's gonna be one of the problems, I guess, if you work at the restaurant. You're not gonna be able to pull right up
And when you leave at night at 1 o'clock, it's gonna be the same process, right?
on a lighted area. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And we know that there's a lot of security around here with the for the daycare,
Yeah.
the bank.
So just one more question, and I'll let it go for now. The Aroma Joe's design, is that typical of the chain, the design of the blue and offset colors, you know?
Yes, it is. It is typical. We have softened that blue color. We've been working with the Aroma Joe's on that. There is flexibility to revise those colors if necessary.
Okay, all right. All set, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mr. Delaney?
I'd like to go back to the snow storage. I mean, I don't know where they're gonna put the snow, where you're gonna be able to plow it anyway. That's the first time I've ever heard here in a meeting that you're gonna put the snow on top of the landscaping that already has snow on it. I'm under the impression you're supposed to have snow storage, or a place to put it, or you have to take it off the property. That's my thing. Another thing is, we've got a list here of landscaping items that have to be redone because they were poorly done to begin with, or they plowed the parking lot wrong, or they did something else. You know, the first year you have your restaurant and you plow the snow, then you're gonna be back fixing the landscape when you pile the extra snow on top of it. That's one of the questions. The other thing is the coffee shop. You definitely need 2 lanes, because it'll be a nightmare. One car wants to pull out and they can't go anywhere. The other thing is, the coffee shop itself, is it gonna have an availability for like a men's room and a ladies' room or a bathroom if somebody wants to use it? Can they get in to use the bathroom?
Yes.
Okay? Because I don't see any provisions for that here. I see a handicap parking space and I see another parking space, which is all well and good, but as long as there is access. I know that the coffee shop is a to-go coffee shop. You don't go inside to sit down or whatever. But I would think, like people coming off of Andover Street or 495, they stop, they have to use the bathroom. They gotta go somewhere. Okay, so,
Must refresh on his
you know,
mind.
I wanna make sure that that's in the process here of what we're gonna put together. The other thing is, like I said, the snow and where you're gonna plow it to, where you're gonna put it, I have no idea. Because everything is right up to everything, you know, even if you try to put it on the landscape areas, it doesn't even look like there's enough landscape areas to put it, which narrows this parking lot down a tremendous amount. I am all set.
Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, what else can you say? I agree with most everybody's comments about the 2 lanes. Although I don't want to call it 2 lanes because it's really one travel lane and an escape lane. So if you add the 2 feet that you were talking about, it makes it more palatable. So you can use that.
Sure.
I appreciate that. But just don't ever come back here. You know how they now, McDonald's and other places are putting in kiosks, so you can order from over here, you can order from over here, and you can order from over here. And everybody goes down to the one travel lane, so it's a fight. So if you did that, that would create a problem there, which I'm sure you can't on this small lot. But as long as it's one lane and you let people know that there is an escape lane there, that way they know what it's for, not to line up pushing the other guy out of the way.
Yeah, so you could put some signage when they start to enter that area to say that to keep left and that the right lane's for an emergency use only.
Emergency escape lane. Sometimes they even put service 5 minutes from here or 2 minutes from here. I saw one the other day and it was like 10 spaces back, 20 minutes from here. I said, I wouldn't sit there for 20 minutes. So I thought that was kind of funny. Not a good choice of words. No, all said, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ryder.
Thank you. I think Matt, you have roughly 5 feet green space from the edge of road to property line.
That's correct, yeah.
You know, it's probably not gonna survive, so you might be able to gain a foot or two there.
Yeah, we just,
You know, instead of going with something, I mean, maintenance is gonna be tough there, so you might gain if you go with, as you said, a sloped curb. You could go with a rumble strip,
Right.
something that is different, stone, eliminate that green space. And then you're talking about snow storage, potentially if you relocate your dumpster to the back corner and you update your pickup times, off hours.
The
you
back
could get-
left corner?
Yeah, that back left corner facing building, you get snow storage in the front, and then you can pull around and you can push it straight into that back corner and lose it around. So,
Yeah.
you know, look at that, work that, and potentially in the same thing on your left side with your green space. You know, you've
Yeah.
got 5 feet there between the walls, so
Yeah,
obviously I know he owns both parcels there, so you might be able to do something with
Right.
a stone wall there or something that it's an escape, but you don't need any type of landscaping along that,
Right.
so it's an option.
Yep. I think 16 feet would do it. There's no specific regulation for it in the zoning bylaw for 2 lanes going in one direction. But I think realistically, 16 feet with a sloped granite
Would give you
would
an
work,
escape,
yeah.
would give you an access out of that, I think you would. You know, understanding that, and then I know we originally talked about access, your overflow coming in front of the daycare.
Mhm.
Some sort of, what your intent for delineation.
Traffic calming.
Yeah, traffic calming and
Yeah.
delineation coming through that,
Right.
so.
Yep. Like a wider, speed bump or.
Yeah, table, just a raised table.
Yeah.
Would work there. in
Yeah,
that-
we have, on the right of way, we have that.
You already have you already have the
yeah.
raised table.
Yeah, it's a
going
granite,
in. Yeah.
kind of rumble strip.
Yeah, so I think if
That's
you.
a stamped concrete.
Yeah, so I think if you mimic that.
Okay.
In there, kind of stays within what you did on the property. And then are we on both now? Can I go back? Okay. Just to switch gears a minute over to the restaurant. I like the fact you have your extra spaces out back. The only thing I would have a slight bit of concern is your sidewalk ends. That back section.
Yep.
So you ultimately, now you're coming in, you're walking into that. If you can look and see if there's the ability to get a walkway to the back there. You know where their storage is, that their
Door for
storage,
the
in the
trash
storage
bin?
bin? Yeah, just so they're not walking, you could, that would give that, and then I know there's lighting along the pathway, but is there lighting
There is lighting in that back part.
in the back parking lot? Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure what you meant, Mr. Ryder.
If you're gonna access, yeah, if you come out and you go to your back access parking lot where your staff, behind the bank, or it's actually behind,
Here?
nope, follow up that back, additional 25 spaces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you lose your access out there, that sidewalk dead ends.
Oh,
It
right there,
basically,
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
So if you can look at something there to give your,
I mean, what we can do is, I can't say that nobody uses this area right now. It's not actively used. There's no curb cut to North Road off
Right.
of this. So, maybe we could just incorporate some
striping, yep, just something that delineates that walkway for future, and then obviously making sure that the lighting is safe going back there, Phil. You're walking,
Sure.
as Mr. Fratelli said, at night, you're given the excess parking. Other than that, I like the design. I will say, I was just up in Maine last 2 weekends ago, and the Aroma Joes are everywhere up there, and they are blue. So if you can tone the blue down a little bit, they do stand out, I will say that. So just to fit in that area.
Sure.
We were, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Adam Terrace in Lowell. Yep. The first house on the left, it's Arctic blue. Yep. That's the color that we're looking to go with.
Okay. Good, that's all I have, thank you.
Okay, all right. So let me start with the coffee side. Am I incorrect, but I thought the last time we talked about this, that arrow that shows people going left in the front isn't supposed to be there, right?
Yeah, we're gonna modify this. So this is just,
You did mention that.
Okay, so that one's not, it's not to come in and go left.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I should have updated.
So just because I think that traffic turn
Yeah,
would be
we're
a
gonna narrow
nightmare
that
if people
down.
are actually doing that, so. I mean, I'm fine, if you can figure out how to fit in the drop-down lane to get people out, that's fine. I mean, I know if I go to Burger King, I'm committed. You know what I mean? I get in line, I gotta go through the line, there's no way out of there. So I mean, not every drive-through has, you know, 2-lane escape hatches if you decided that you've changed your mind when you arrive, that you no longer want to be there, but if you can fit it, that's fine. I mean, I'm not as concerned about it, because again, I mean, you know, I've committed into enough drive-through lanes that, you know, I've made my decision. So, and that's fine. I mean, I guess in this case, we're dealing with people who haven't had their coffee yet. A little bit more of an issue potentially, I guess, but, and as far as the snow storage thing, I mean, you know, whatever you can work out, but I mean, we have had other sites where we've allowed it, but the decision is then that you're required to, in the spring, basically put it back if you've done damage to it,
Right.
because the intent is we want it to look nice. That's why we made it a landscape area to begin with. If it gets beat up, because again, yes, of course, snow falls everywhere, but you're also piling it on in a certain spot. Excuse me, it's more likely to become damaged than just where the snow happens to fall.
And I think in this particular case, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
If this is a small site, so if we get a significant amount of snow, we're gonna take the snow out
Right.
of here. We're not gonna be trying to pile this stuff up just.
Right, which we would have gotten to
Yeah,
when we got to that
eventually
point
we're gonna
anyways.
get there.
You know, we weren't gonna have much room, because we've done that a few in smaller sites too, and we've said, you know, we've set a height. I know we did it off one of the ones on Main Street, and we said, no higher than this, or
We
it's
did
gotta
it-
go.
We did it on the daycare, actually. We have lines on the poles, the light poles, and if the snow went beyond the line, then it had to be removed off of the site. And as far as I know, we haven't had an issue over at the daycare, and that was a concern over there.
We'll knock on wood, because we're not calling for more snow. But I think that's probably probably a good guide, but I think the difference was, I think in that case, you chose to do it, whereas I think for something like this, we're probably gonna say, you have to do it, we're gonna make it a condition. But I think using like
was a
that line
condition.
marking.
It was
Oh,
a
we did,
condition.
okay,
Yeah,
all
it
right,
was.
I didn't recall, but that's fine. I'll agree too, I mean, anything you can do to sort of tone down, you know, the bright coloring of their, you know, I mean, again, I don't like messing with people's,
Could be
you
my
know,
printer, too.
brand, but at the same time, just whatever can be done. I think we did discuss too on there's one of the renderings up, but remembering that we want them, all of that to look sort of similar with the sort of decorative pieces, that it all fits. You know, I think the design for the restaurant is really nice. I like the way it looks. I'm glad the wall, you know, can be added in for safety, but also aesthetically pleasing, and it's not just metal, you know, pylons put in there to protect people, but it all could, you know, that it can look nice at the same time. Is it, I don't know if they know, but is it intended to be used at night as well?
Just.
That
the out-
patio area?
When it's nice.
Only
I mean, it's
because,
just gonna be
again,
for-
the lighting,
Yeah,
whatever
there's
the lighting is, again, we don't want it to have that nice kind of classic look. You know, not just whatever that happens to light it up, because I think it all goes along with that. Trying to think what else. I mean, I'm disappointed that you lose the access into the hotel piece, but that's fine if you do the sidewalk. That way people can kind of get through. I think that's useful, so I think that's good. If you lose the access, that's fine.
Honestly, it got, I think, too complicated corporate.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I suppose
Like,
that's, you know.
Access Drive, and they just, it wasn't, it's a national company, so.
I mean, I think it
sidewalk.
came, I'm sure it came down to them decide, you know, do our patrons really want to drive through to get there? Because otherwise, it's just,
Liability.
it's everybody else just driving through. If it's
Right.
not their people coming to eat,
Exactly.
what do they care? So, I mean, if the walkway's sufficient for them, that's fine. I think that was it for my comments on those. Yeah, so with that, I'll open it up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns on either of these two? Seeing none, bring it back to the board. What is the pleasure of the board at this time? Or any other questions or comments by anyone on the board at this time?
We have nothing we're waiting for?
Just a few, you have a few
Lighting,
things.
lighting plan.
Well, that, I mean, that could
Landscape plan.
And they were gonna submit revised plans.
Right, and they have some revised stuff coming in, so I would suspect we're going to go to the next meeting in September, and then most of the Ts and Is, I think, will be taken
Yes.
care of by then, so.
What are they, what are we holding off?
They got a couple of things to finish up with engineering. I think they also still need to settle their sewer issue and which direction you go or whatever. You know, so a few things, and then we'll want to see some of what we discussed tonight incorporated in. Yeah, so I think,
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we continue it to September 9th.
all right, at
Second.
7:10. So we have a motion to continue, I'm sorry, no, 7:05. We have a motion to continue this to 7:05 on September 9th, 2019. At a motion, at a second. All those, yes, Mr. Fowler.
Just to remind the board, that is the night I will not be here.
Okay. All right, well, I mean, again, it'll be up to you guys when you get here that night, you know, what you have to present and whether you want to go forward, that's up to you. But we'll put you on for that. You can always, if you don't want, you can always continue as well.
Mr. Fowler, are you going to be here on?
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. That's right.
23rd?
Huh?
The next meeting after that, you would be here, though?
Yes.
Yep.
Which is the 23rd.
So why don't we put you on for the 9th, but then you can obviously, if you have some things just to bring in, you can bring them in. If you want to continue, that's fine too, but rather than push you off and then, you know. So actually, what we'll end up with this is 1583 Andover Street will be 7:05, 1624 Andover Street will be 7:10. So that's just officially, so we have a motion made for those two times, and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. See you guys in
Thanks so much.
September. Thank you.
Did we close the public hearing? Not yet, no. Continue.
All right, so moving on to agenda item F, which is 2131 Main Street, continued from 7:15 as well. Just gonna give Mr. Frataia a second. Just side point, while we're waiting for Mr. Frataia to come. I never really thought about it much, but when I drove through Billerica the other night, you ever notice the really nice lights they have leading out of their town center? They stop right around the shopping center there, but those are beautiful. They really are.
They just did the same thing, all new decorative black
I mean, I know we've talked about that, but I think that's definitely something like town center, like that. I mean, they're gorgeous. They really are.
When we revisited the whole center 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When we eliminated the road and, left of the bandstand, and we changed all the lights. Our budget wasn't as lucrative as, that's what we wanted.
Right. But I mean, I think I've driven by it before, but it's been a while since I've done it at night where I've thought about it, and I went by there, and it was like, the sidewalks are nice, the lighting is nice. I mean, it does sort of come abruptly to an end like that, but Anyway, side note anyways.
Because we also wanted granite curbs, and we got asphalt sidewalks, and we wanted the six concrete, yes.
All right, so we are on to agenda item F, which is 2131 Main Street. Gentlemen, would you state your names for the record? And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andy Street, Civil Design Consultants. John Fanaris, applicant. So this project has obviously been before the board several times at this point. My plan tonight for this presentation was to give just kind of a brief overview, talk about the tweaks and changes that we've done since the last time we were here, and just kind of a broad overview, but certainly more than willing to discuss any detail that's found in this project. So this is a 2.6 acre parcel, 2131 Main Street. The project was previously before the board under a separate application. We came before the board with that application with 19 townhome units spread out over 3 buildings in a very similar layout that you see here tonight. There was also a 2,000 square foot commercial space with parking in front of that building along Main Street. This application that's before the board currently has 15 townhome units, again, spread out over those 3 buildings, also with a 2,000 square foot commercial space, but the parking is now in the rear of that building. So the last time we were here, there were several relatively minor comments, at least in our eyes, to address. They have been addressed and are included either on the civil plans prepared by my office, so there's a lighting plan that's submitted, landscape plan, but the changes really were limited to reconfiguring this building here. The application package included, it had the same 15 units, but that footprint was bigger and the units were all larger, so they weren't consistently sized with the other 2 buildings and the units that were in those buildings. All units now are 21 by 36. So this building was effectively shrunk, and by doing that, it got pulled further away from Main Street. I know kind of a comment that's come up about that building in particular is its proximity to Main Street. So the further we get, the further away it is, the less likely there is for traffic problems with people turning onto the property and someone trying to back out of this unit that's closer to Main Street down here. So the units are all consistent now. That building's a little further away. To go with those changes, we made some, the necessary minor tweaks to grading and utilities and things like that to make it all fit. But we also revised the landscape plan that was included in the last submission to accommodate this. So it's really largely the same scheme, same theme carried throughout, but we just wanted to close that loose end. So there's a landscape plan that goes with the current layout that you see. The applicant worked with the post office on identifying a spot for a community mailbox. It was a pretty good process, and we were able to pick a spot that's shown here, which was actually a location that we discussed with this board, I think, prior to the meetings with the post office. So that was the spot they identified. We showed that on the plan. We have a note on the plan just to let everyone know that, especially since this is a new process, I believe. My office hasn't been through this process, but the note just says to make sure that prior to installation, it gets coordinated with the post office again. So, but it is shown on the plan in that location, so the mail truck can pull in, drop off, and then spin around and exit the site. The lighting plan has been provided. OmniLight, who I believe has done other projects in this town, they prepared the lighting plan and submitted it. I believe that those really were the major comments. Since this submission, we've got two sets of feedback. One from Ms. McGinty was actually about that lighting plan, wanting confirmation on the mounting heights. 20 feet is required for, I believe it's a less than 90-degree cutoff on those lights. I actually just hours ago, well, at this point it's been several hours, but just before the end of the workday, got a new lighting plan because the plan you have currently does specify a 22-foot mounting height. So this plan, which I'm happy to submit now if that's appropriate, shows 20-foot mounting height. It's all the same fixtures. There's some cut sheets in there with the style of lights. It's all the same style and everything, just 2 feet shorter. We also received a comment letter from Mr. Hardman over in the DPW. We tweaked, really the only change to this layout and the drainage system is the size of that building. And by reducing the size of the building, we reduce the amount of impervious surface, and impervious surface often drives the amount of stormwater that's generated by the site. So we didn't actually submit new drainage calculations. The stormwater system remained the same. So there's excess capacity. It was designed appropriately for the old layout, and now we have a smaller footprint, so it's more than appropriate for the current layout. Mr. Hardman requested that new drainage calculations be submitted regardless. I read it almost as more of like an accounting type thing. He wants the file complete. We got that letter on Friday. I emailed him calculations today, and I have 2 copies of those same calculations I emailed him, so I can submit these as well. Sorry for the up and down.
So just for clarification, Kate, those calculations don't show any issues resulting from the smaller building. You don't have any drainage issues that are now created by it?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a better situation, if anything. I mean, we're talking, it's such a small decrease in footprint, it's marginally better, I guess I'll put it that way, but there's certainly no issues that were created. The system is still designed appropriately. Outside of that, the utility systems, the general grading scheme, it's all the same as it was in that original application. So I believe we've addressed all the board's concerns and those of reviewers, but we're certainly happy to answer any other questions about those specific items or anything else related to the site. So, thank you.
All right. Stop, Mr. Ryder.
What iteration this is right now, so there's been a few. I think the last thing we discussed is we stated decreasing the size of that. I don't have anything other than they addressed the lighting, as I saw in Anna's earlier comments, as well as Mr. Hardeman's. Other than that, they've met everything that we asked for at the last meeting. So I'm all set. Thank you.
Mr. Fowler.
I am all set. We've come a long way in this plan. Took us a long time. But we finally came to a plan that I think both sides can agree to. That's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Delaney.
I agree with my counterparts that they've done everything we've asked of them. They've been here many times. So I think it's about time that we give them their due.
Mr. Fratelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually want to commend you for reviewing our submissions and comments and taking them into consideration and doing them accordingly. It makes for a better working relationship between the applicant and the board as far as that goes. So thank you for that. I had a question on the bike rack. I see the bike rack location. I was just wondering why it was placed in that particular location, or who do you plan on servicing by having it there? Just curious.
I think in general, the bike racks are added to try and further comply with the overlay guidelines is really what it is. I think the general location is trying to serve people coming off the street to serve, either visit the commercial space or potentially leave it one in the back as well for people who might just be, cycling to see a friend or relative or something like that.
I was just questioning whether you believe that the bike rack would be there for the purpose of somebody coming in, parking their bike, using the commercial space, or if you had it on the left side, maybe possibly somebody parking there with their bike and using the green space that's there and getting out of the way of traffic with a bike. But I didn't know why or where, or what the idea was behind that location, so.
To me, it was more to encourage multiple ways of accessing the commercial space and the development itself.
Yeah.
To not just have to get there by a car, you can easily get there by bike as well.
And just for the record, how many units are these going to be for affordable housing?
15, it's the standard, the percentage, 15%, I think is what it is. So I'd have to do the math. Was it 2? It was 2. 2 with 15 units.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. 2 or 3? Can we get 3 out of that? Okay. All right. All set, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Italia, I was ready to squeeze the last out of the lime there.
Oh, I commend you for what you did. Honest to God, you did a great job.
All right, so, I mean, I'll say the same thing. I mean, granted, they're separate projects, but I think in everybody's mind, we know that where we started, where we're finishing in the site, put it that way. As far as I can tell, everything we've asked for has now been addressed. We now have the landscaping, we now have the lighting. Obviously, the submission tonight that fixes the height issue is submitted. It's just different than what we saw. It just takes care of the height issue. So otherwise, I'm all set at this point. Anyone?
And Mr. Chairman, it's 2 units for affordable housing.
That's what I thought.
Just to confirm. Yeah.
All right, so with that, I'll open up to the audience. Anyone in the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns? Once, twice? Seeing none, I return it to the board. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to close the hearing.
All right, motion made, do I second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
All those opposed, motion carries. All right, so do we have waivers for this? Where are they listed? So we have the,
It's your choice. Close the hearing, and then we come back with a draft of special permit so that they can review it. Town council can review it. I'm just checking.
so, all right, so we have, first we have the waivers as listed. We have them on our sheets. Anyone with any issues with those? Anyone? No? All right, so do we have a motion on the waivers as requested?
I'll make a motion to approve the waivers as requested in the permit, in the application, I'm sorry.
So actually, we'll use the ones that are coming in the most recent submittal. That way we're using the last version.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we use, a motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries on the waivers.
Okay.
Now, as to the South Village Overlay District Special Permit. So first, I think we, in order to do our housekeeping, we make a decision that we feel that the project has met the criteria listed in the bylaw for, what do I think, 8, is it the 8 listed? And as discussed, those items we feel have been addressed.
Yes.
Okay, so, do you want this as a separate motion or just within the motion?
Challenge the rule this one over.
All right, so we'll just make that as part of the
Yes.
motion for the
So
approval
it's-
itself, but we've made that
Absolutely.
determination included in. Okay, so do we have a motion on the, thank you. Yep. Okay, so we have a motion on the special permit as requested.
So moved.
All right. So a motion to grant the special permit as requested, with everything listed tonight included, because it's the most recent. So that includes the pad for the mail, the revision to the size of the building, all that is now included.
New lighting plan.
New lighting
all-
plan and
yes.
landscaping plan as submitted.
Right.
All right, so we have the motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. All right, all set.
Gee, wasn't that easy?
You're all set.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Wasn't that easy?
Well, that's already.
When are you starting?
Yeah, no, it's, yeah.
Saturday. Oh, like the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not.
Where we going? Yeah, where the, they'll probably start 4 of them all at the same time.
All right, moving on to, what's that?
Can't get the money.
I mean, this, we don't have that as a set thing. We send that stuff out. I mean, it's gonna have to be something we change at some point. If we do, that, we know ahead of time, because then they can bring it in. You know what I mean?
Some shoulders.
All right. Moving on to agenda item G, which is 1037 North Street, 1547 Andover Street, at all Andover Street addresses. The petitioner has requested that this be continued to our September 9th meeting. It is listed on here already for 7, so do I have a motion to continue this hearing to 7 PM on September 9th? Yes, I have a motion made, do I have a second? Motion
Second.
made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. That brings us to agenda item H, which is 1420 Andover Street. This is the special permit and definitive subdivision continued from our July meeting. Nothing will get done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just, again, they will not be here September 9th.
Yeah. I mean, again, everybody's gonna have to make their decisions based on who is present, but I'd
Yeah.
rather just, they asked for it to be followed to that meeting, so once they're aware.
Oh, I
make the decision.
understand, but there's no meeting between now.
Well, I think
I might not be
Mayor is
here either.
aware, he was here when you stated that.
Let me know, 'cause I'm on
Yes.
tour.
Yeah, first.
What?
Yeah, I can report back, but.
Physical evidence.
Yeah,
Never mind.
from my end, at least.
What are you in? You missed his grin.
This picture.
Him is the grim.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like, we've been fine without it. Like, I don't understand.
I bet I know what that is.
All right, gentlemen, if you just state your names for the record, the floor will be yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, David Plunkett, represent the applicant, Southern End Realty LLC. With me here at the desk is Frank Gorman, a representative or principal of Southern End Realty LLC, and Matt Hammer from Landplex, the engineer in charge of the project. Mr. Chairman, the last time we were here, there were some issues to be discussed with the town engineer, and last week a letter came out from Mr. Hardeman, and I think that we are pretty well set to address all the issues that are referenced in that. We submitted a letter with a listing of the proposed waivers and specific language to address his request that we submit in writing certain things that consistent with the homeowners association, and that in fact the private way will be, the applicant will enter into a utility agreement relative to the operation, maintenance of water, sewer, and storm water utilities through the homeowners association. That, though, I mean, again, typically would be a condition of the special permit, which would actually be the, operative condition, whether we put it in writing or not, but that addresses that, as well as the issue pertaining to the width of the asphalt or the roadway, pertaining to the, a principle that has been maintained by the town for fairly significant period of time, in which the reduction of width would have benefits on many fronts. One being that you're reducing the width of the asphalt, you're reducing the impervious surface, and you're reducing the runoff. Also, by means of having it as a private way, there are benefits to the town, relative to the fact that the cost of, plowing, maintenance, and repair of the roadway is is no longer the burden of the town and would be covered by the homeowners association. So there's a clear benefit that is tied into the requested waivers that's consistent with the position of the town through many similar projects throughout the town over the years. Relative to the plan submitted tonight, I'll ask Mr. Hammer to go through the details of it and reference how, specifically to Mr. Hardeman's comments.
So there's been a fair amount of discussion about the geometry of the roadway. For the right-of-way, where it connects to the geometry of the roadway of Andover Street. And yes, you have geometry of roadways, but I just want to reiterate that we're not physically a right-of-way roadway here. We're a common driveway within a right-of-way. Definitely there should be a distinction made there. But nonetheless, I met with Mr. Hardiman to see if we can resolve this geometry issue, which happens to be where the curb return now is shown here, showing a curb return that would be typical for a town-accepted right-of-way. The town wants to maintain this physical right-of-way curb return in order to show that if you could provide it, even though it has no relevance on the common driveway whatsoever, but to physically show it. So we went back and we showed this right-of-way here. If you go to sheet 2 of the plan set, this is going to be the most important sheet that gets recorded at the Registry of Deeds, because this is going to be the definitive subdivision of the parcels. And what happened was our original pavement came over such that the edge of the pavement was in front of the frontage to one of our parcels, and that there's a DPW policy that wants to prohibit the pavement from rounding around in front of another person's property that could potentially impede their access out of their property out to the roadway. I've been contesting that this parcel is part of our project, so that shouldn't matter, because once this special permit is issued for this project, this parcel can never come out into Andover Street. They're bound by the common driveway from which the special permit governs that. Be it as it may, we said, sure, okay, we can create the rounding here that now does not have frontage here that would affect this curb return of the physical pavement of the driveway. So we did that. We changed the plan. We create a little parcel here. It changes the parcel configuration of the lot. It all still conforms, and we did that. We got the comments on Friday. Apparently, I was supposed to show the center line of the right-of-way where it now bends, because the curb return has the right-of-way center line bending. I didn't correctly show how that comes into Andover Street. We can most clearly make the change, but I just wanted to let you know that I left the meeting thinking that we were all set, because we got rid of the need for a waiver, technically from the DPW regulations related to that pavement with being in front of the frontage, and now that comment is gone now. But what also happened, unfortunately, is the town engineer went out and stood out at where the entrance is to the roadway. And we now have a comment that says, that I observed the sight lines from the existing driveway at Andover Street. The sight line looking west was obstructed due to a parked vehicle. The neighbors here are moving. There's been a moving truck there. I went there today. So everyone's moving out of the house. So there must have been a vehicle in the way when Mr. Hardman went out there. But he also says, there's a maple tree and a pine tree behind the vehicle, which will also obstruct the sight line. Now the DPW has concerns regarding the available sight line. The applicant shall provide site distance measurements to demonstrate that the proposed roadway meets the necessary sight lines for Andover Street. We only do sight lines one way. What's that?
Yeah.
You come back 10 feet from the edge of pavement, you come up 3.5 feet, and you shoot the clear line of sight, which in this case was 291 feet. Which we did. I confirmed with I triple checked with the surveyors, that's what we did. I actually went out there today and took a photo. And yes, there's a maple tree there. There is a branch that comes off.
Here's the picture I have.
But you can see the vehicle underneath the tree branch. And I would recommend, I believe that tree is probably a town of Tewksbury tree. I can test that we still meet the sight line requirements. We've provided it on a plan. We've conducted the survey the way that AASHTO requires us to, because we need it to be greater than 250 lineal feet of sight line. But I also took this photo at 3.5 feet above the ground, and you can clearly see the vehicle underneath the tree. The pine tree that is referenced is actually behind this maple tree. And yes, if you clear all those trees, you'll get more sight line, but that's not how we took the sight distance measurement. It was taken through survey.
Just an FYI, Mr. Hammer, when I was there myself, there was a truck parked in the driveway obstructing view.
Right.
I have a copy of it on my phone, so just an FYI. So.
Right, and that was a moving truck that was there today?
No, this is last week when I went, before the last meeting. It was there a couple times when I was there, so it's got to be a resident that parks his truck there.
So there is a long driveway there, it's not just a short driveway, there's enough vehicles, enough room in that driveway for many vehicles, I would say 3, from what I saw today. But that's a comment in his letter that just most recently came up on Friday. And here we are on Monday. I'm unable to resolve that particular comment. But I can say that his comment related that whether we should confirm the sight lines doesn't need to be done because we've already performed the sight line measurement the way that we're supposed to by survey. I did speak to the fire department today. They've looked at the 3-point turnaround. It's the same turnaround we've had on all the other plans. They received a copy of that turnaround plan a couple weeks ago. And it looks as though we're either going to have to extend. See, Andover Street got paved, I believe it was a year ago. And there's a policy where you can't cut into a road for 5 years until after, can't cut into a road for 5 years unless specifically given authorization by DPW in order to do so. And this road's been in for a year. That's part of the reason why we've been keeping the utilities off with the sewer manhole so that we wouldn't have to cut into the street, which was something that we were going through with DPW. But two things are either gonna have to happen. The hydrant's gonna have to come in 150 feet here to ensure that that hydrant's 500 feet from the closest building, or both buildings are gonna have to be sprinkled. So.
I mean, is there a requirement, I mean, I don't know what the DPW, the policy, is there a curb-to-curb repaving? Is there any policy that they have if there's a 5-year moratorium on the roadway? However, usually there's a curb-to-curb paving of X number of feet, center line of your trench that's paved, and is that, I mean, I'll be honest, that's better than sprinkling the buildings, or bringing the hydrant in 150, you didn't even bring that in. And that will allow you to make a connection for your sewer and...
Yeah, the sewer's all set. We've already gone through the sewer part of the utilities.
How far, where's the water main, is that on the...
It's on the opposite side of the road.
Opposite side of the street, so...
Mr. Chairman, just as we're discussing that issue, Mr. Gorman, in order to try to bring this to a head, he is agreeable that one way or the other will be resolved. Either bring the hydrant as required, or he will sprinkle. Like I say, just basically the time factor involved here, the cost of the time factor is of such a magnitude that he's willing to say, if I have to sprinkle it, I'll sprinkle.
No, you're gonna need to bring a service in no matter what. You have one existing service to the existing home.
Yeah, we're bringing a water service in, yes.
So you have to go in the roadway no matter what.
Well, we were gonna put a well in for the domestic here, and then when we're gonna stub this out and bring the water line out to that point. Yeah, make the connection.
I would make the suggestion, talk to engineer and see if you can do a curb-to-curb pavement and be done with it. Instead of going back in 5 years and you're gonna get a 3.5-foot trench, do it now, get a wider curb-to-curb pavement, you're gonna have less issues with a trench over time.
Yeah, and that can be a condition, whatever we have to do there. I like to add one.
Really cost versus wells and, doing the excavation later, or paving it, doing the tie-in now, and, flowable fill and just around those spots. If you're not looking at a lot.
But if I'm not mistaken, what you guys are putting forward is, you don't want to wait to get an answer on that. You're basically saying, we'll do one or the other.
Right.
So that it can move forward.
Correct.
Obviously, the preference is to get the approval for
And that'd be our preference also.
Right, but if in the alternative, you're basically just covering and saying, we will do the alternative if we
Right,
can't
rather than
get
say,
the
come
okay.
back in a month to say, okay, you can do it or you can't do it, and then, so we're basically saying it's gonna happen one of two ways. Whichever way it is, Mr. Gorman is saying, we'll do it.
One additional comment that came up recently, it's just a new comment, is that's where you're gonna see these red cars, vehicles on this plan. He had a comment that he wanted to show how a car is gonna come around here and come into this driveway. That's what this plan represents, to show the room of where vehicles are coming out and how vehicles can come in to get to this driveway. And another comment, and I thought that we had an understanding when I met with Mr. Hardman, is this conversation we had related to the location of this drive. And I think that this plan shows the two vehicles that honestly is rarely going to be the case. And that if somebody is leaving this driveway they could just simply wait here. And I don't think, yes, we can move the driveway over a few feet, but I have a utility pole right here, and I have a retaining wall right here. And I think what this shows you, that you do have two vehicles here, and it shows the distance away from where this vehicle would be exiting, but this also shows, related to his comment, that a car can clearly come right up into the driveway. These are just new comments that we got on Friday, and it's just something that we just have to respond the best we can in order to at least show you that we've addressed it and that we feel confident that this works the way that it's been designed with the site distance as well as the location of this drive.
Also, Mr. Chairman, just pointing out, excuse me, some of the items that were discussed last time, there is the placement of the pad near the entryway to Andover Street so that they could stand there waiting for a bus. That you had the increased width of 14 feet along the roadway. And again, right now, we're dealing with adding one more house, one more property, in that you've already got the front property, and there was that back property that had been used. This situation here, I think that we've had very positive reaction from people indicating that that back parcel is going to be back structure is going to be removed. You're going to have a brand-new home built there, and we've also got the buffer line of trees along the back line to address the concerns of the Sawyer Lane abutters who were saying that, what can we do to make certain screening and things of that sort. So the structure's being moved further away from that lot line by the demolition and build out of the new one and the addition of the screening. And Mr. Gorman spoke to the abutters, and that's his approach. Talk to them. Say what you're concerned about.
In the proposed light pole that we put in down the end too.
Good.
Two of them.
Sounds like a good team effort.
And one last thing, comment in terms of the application for the name. We have the application is set for submitting once, if the vote is taken. We'll file this with the Selectman's office, and it's already set for application. Okay, and also, since the last time, Post Office did approve of the location of the post box. This is. So in case it's not on record, we do have the letter from the Postal Service indicating that they have approved.
Not sure if it is. I was like this earlier.
Are you guys all set?
I think that's all we have, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have a question. No.
No?
It's just a comment. Yeah, it just was a comment that I don't recall getting a copy of these plans until tonight.
No, I
Did you submit
understand that
them to our
this
office?
plan, the only thing this plan represents is showing the red vehicles exiting and coming into the property.
Thank you for clarifying, because I
Yeah,
wasn't
sorry.
sure about the
Yeah.
changes. And,
Yeah, right.
yeah. Okay, I'm all set.
Mr. Rowdy?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just wondering, Anna, did you talk to Mr. Hardiman about this? I mean,
I haven't talked to him directly about his letters, so no.
okay,
Yeah.
I mean, you could say that, I mean, ultimately, this is a driveway. You could say that about, 75% of the driveways in town. And I think he's looking at it from a roadway. I understand that a roadway, you do need the 65 degree, you need the sight distance, but it is I'm just wondering what way he's looking at this. And I pull out of my driveway and there's my neighbor's cars parked there. I have to look around it. So I was looking at
I
where
think
he's
to the
getting
same,
at.
to the same point, the queuing concern here at the end of the drive, I mean, again, there's only gonna be so many residents, there's only so many cars. There's only so often that that's gonna happen. It's not a street. We have to treat it initially as a street.
Right.
And from his purpose, I think the same thing, so he can only comment on it in that frame. But I think ultimately then it comes down to us to determine whether or not we're satisfied with what's presented.
Right, I mean, I tend not to go against the engineer, that's, it's his job to do that, and that's, I'm struggling with where he's coming off on this particular item. I can understand whether it be the water and that. Ideally, I'd like to see it on town water, but that's something that if the DPW can work out, I think that's worth a conversation if they have any type of mitigation that can be done.
Did you have anything else?
No, everything, they met everything that we've asked for in all of the meetings. We were waiting on Mr. Hardiman's, on that sight line was really the big thing. We talked about the light poles, we talked about the bus stop, the extension of the parking across from the additional, that existing home, the buffer for the setbacks on the neighbors. I think they've met everything so far.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Delaney?
I'm in agreement with him. They've met all the requirements that we've asked for. And the sightline, you're coming out of a driveway. This is not like you're coming out of Marshall Street onto Route 38. So I'm in agreement with
Mr. Vitale?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, on my last visit to the site, reviewing it, the truck was at that particular location. Treacherous coming out of there with the truck there. Believe me when I say.
No, and I saw a truck there myself today. They are moving out today. I don't know how long it takes them to move out. I don't know what they're doing there, but I saw a moving truck there today. So, it's a, I know when.
With the vehicle parked where it was, the sight line was diminished considerably. So, for my access out, treacherous. I mean, I know Mr. Fowler mentioned it before, years ago, how hard it was getting out of that particular area with that curve being there, so, but it was not easy. Maybe the fact that the moving truck is there only temporarily and will be gone, that's okay, but I had issues with that. I brought it to his attention, he went out, took a picture of it as well, and said the same thing.
Oh, Kevin, that's why Kevin went out?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that was my initiating of that, so. My other question is, with the post office box there, is that gonna stop, prohibit some sight distance as well?
No, the postman can pull right up, drop off.
Talking about a resident coming out of the property.
I think the
That box gonna block any sight vision as well.
No, I think the postman's gonna pull up on the right-hand side, coming into the access. He's gonna turn him or her is gonna turn the vehicle around, drop off the mail, and then head out.
Okay.
But, we do have a nice wide throw there. It can handle 4 to 5 cars in there, coming in and out, whether you're coming out or coming in. So I think there's ample room with the way that Mr. Ryder has recommended that we widen the throat out there to be able to handle that. And they typically, come during the day when it's less likely that there would be anything happening there. So I think it's gonna be fine.
Okay.
And he might pull right up to the right-hand side of Andover Street or something and get out. I can't predict how.
I vision him driving in, turning around and coming out, and exiting the vehicle on the right-hand side. and go into the box, possibly to deliver it.
Yeah, he may just turn right around in the driveway right there, get himself pointed the other way, get out for a few seconds, drop off the mail and head out.
Okay, so how many outstanding issues do we have with Mr. Hardeman? Do we have an idea on that?
The issues are what I said. The site distance is an outstanding issue. Whether you can turn into that driveway, which I'm showing you with those red overlay vehicles that you can pull into the driveway. And he wants me to just change the technical nature of the dimensioning of the center line of the right-of-way, which is just an edit to the plan itself. And that he's relying on us to gain full approval from the fire department with any issues that they may have.
Okay. All set, Mr. Chairman.
Although, just in terms of the site distance, though, the surveying has been done, and we have established, in compliance with the rules and regulations, proper site distance. So it's, I don't see that, I think he raised a question, but the answer is that the surveyor complied with the rules and regulations and shot a site distance of 290 some odd feet, which requires 250. So, I would say that is not an issue, other than he was asked to, so I think it's more of a clarification.
Yes, for some verification or clarification of it, and I did that with the surveyors, made sure that it was done correctly, spoke with them specifically about that maple tree to make sure that it was shot to the left as you're facing it, and I physically went out to the site myself today just to make sure I did have a clear line, which is that photo.
Okay. All set, Mr. Chairman.
All set.
So I guess I get, I know we've had this sometimes before, like I think, there is a difference, I think, with the things that Mr. Hardeman sends us. Like you pointed out, some things are comments, some things are problems. At some point, we have to make a final decision when he brings up an issue, whether or not we feel it's been addressed by what's been presented or not. Others are simply problems, and you cannot go forward until they are addressed. I believe that the issue described or dealt with the red cars on this plan is one of those where you're showing a concern he had, you're showing how it works. If the board is satisfied, then we can go move forward. That's not a problem, it's a concern. I think the same thing on the delineation on the line that needs to be updated on the plan as a technical issue and not a you can't do it. Meaning you wouldn't be able to show it. You can show it. You just need to add it to the plan so that you can show it. I think the other thing that we also have to keep in mind, when we start off with this, it's a road, technically. But that's not what we're doing. It's a driveway. So although it starts off as a road, you got to think of it in terms of how does a driveway work when you pull out of any other driveway. If you went to the person next door's driveway and tried to shoot the sight line and you pulled a car to the end of this driveway, it'd be in the way too. Because they're two driveways next to each other. It's not a street. This isn't coming out of North Street. This isn't coming out of Trull.
It's private.
It's a driveway. That's how we're treating it. That's why it's the size it is. That's why it's being used the way it's used. Again, that's a temporary problem when there's a vehicle parked at the end of that road, something you can't control. If there's a giant tree in the way or a wall, obviously that's a permanent thing. It's never going to change. It's in your way. You don't have the sight line. I don't see this as being an issue that's going to be present all the time or one you can really address. You can't control where someone parks in a driveway near your driveway. I mean, if they're in their driveway, they're in it. That's just simply reality. Beyond that, I believe within the plan itself, or within the development itself, you've addressed everything we've asked for along the line. We have the lighting at the end that was asked for. We have the cutout that was asked for. We have the driveway taken care of so you don't end up with two driveways coming out onto Main Street ever from going forward. We have the pad for any students that might have to wait for a bus. I don't believe that there is anything left to be addressed that is a problem. It's simply a decision we have to now make, provided you want us to make it now, of whether or not we're satisfied with what's been presented. So that's my feeling on it. I saw two hands sort of twitch. Did you have something, Mr. Fowler?
It's been so long, I don't know if the abutters had a chance to talk yet.
No, we'll get out there. I
Yeah,
didn't
okay.
want to finish
Yeah.
with the board.
Well, it sounded like
Mr. Ryder, no, I wasn't done. I was just making my point.
So we don't forget the other, the
Right.
sidewalk, Mr. Gorman
Yeah. So
said
you-
that
you
he
guys
would
saw this,
contribute to
right?
that fund. And you saw the fee that Mr.
Yeah.
Hardeman calculated?
A little bit higher than I think we talked about last time, but it's gonna be the town standard going forward.
Usually this is how this is the same calculation we did for Old Main, the calculation we did for
Dental.
Comfort Dental.
Oh,
Same-
that's
Same
right.
calculation we did, yes.
Yeah.
To move forward, I'm satisfied with that.
I just wanted to make sure that was in the record as well.
All right, so that takes care of our end right now. So with that, I'll open up to the audience. Anyone with the audience with any questions, comments, or concerns?
Question?
Yep.
Still awake?
Mike Downs, 10 Sawyers Lane. I'm the abutter here.
Yep.
So it's great that they're adding the trees, we appreciate that. Question is there any other is all the vegetation being taken out?
No.
Or is it,
All that vegetation that's there is gonna remain.
I'm not touching any.
You're not touching any of it.
What's probably going to happen is once we tear down the monster that's there, you know, it's built into the hill.
right,
We'll grade it down, so, and reseed it, so plant some trees around it, so it looks,
okay. So all this vegetation is staying in here?
yes. Yep.
So when we had talked, Mr. Gorman and I, we talked about the trees being, at least my impression, where the trees would be inside the vegetation
Versus where it's.
versus way out here. Because I think you had made the comment about shade and trees not growing.
Well, yeah, I thought that you being the direct abutter would want to see the trees that we would be planting.
They're gonna be sitting on a berm area, I thought it would be something you'd wanna see, but if you don't wanna see them,
We don't need to put them in.
Just, I mean, we still want them because all this loses its foliage.
And that's why
In
they're
the fall.
there, is to provide evergreen, year-round, solid, green vegetation for you to see, not for us to see.
The other question was, why not continue for the other neighbor?
I thought there was a discussion about 6 of them
yeah.
at the meeting.
The issue, when you say the other neighbor,
Yeah, the other abutter here.
they didn't ask for it, we're trying to say.
Yeah, they weren't here.
There's significant
I
distance.
mean, as you go further down that line, you're much more even further away from the homes.
Right.
You know what I mean? That probably another 70, 80 feet. The second house is farther away.
Correct. Okay.
A combination of eastern pines and ferns and all that, I mean, you're looking at, you know, by the time you buy them, put them in and all that, you're up to $400 or $500 a tree. By the time you do, I mean, you gotta burn that. I mean, it's a lot of work.
What is the height of these going in?
What's that?
The height of the pine
The
tree?
berm usually runs about.
Not the berm, the pine tree themselves. What size are those?
Oh, they're usually 6 to 7 feet.
6, 7 feet?
Put them in, yeah, they're my height, so they're at least 6, they're over my.
And I know that those trees grow.
They have to be 8 feet, Mr. Chairman. Evergreens.
They have to be 8 feet going in.
Yeah, going in. That's the rules, the bylaw.
Minimum 8?
Yes.
There you go, they're gonna be 8 feet.
Okay, that answers my questions. Thank you.
Anyone else with any other questions, comments, concerns? Once, twice? All right, bring it back to the board. What is, any other questions or comments from anyone from the board? So I'm hesitant before we close it, because I just want to make sure we've talked this out, make sure we're all set before we do this, if we're all set. What is on the issues that were discussed this evening, that were, I guess we'll call new from Mr. Hardeman? How is the board, with what's been presented, do you feel that it addresses it or not?
As I stated earlier, I'm struggling where Mr. Hardeman is, where he's coming from on this. As you stated, it starts with a road. It is now a driveway. I think he's interpreting the regulation from the road.
Right.
But from the regulations, the surveyor met the requirement within all the regulations the surveyor met, and within the guidelines, the 250 feet is the minimum. 10 feet back, 3 feet high, shoots down, he meets 250 feet, it meets the regulation.
And I think too, the other thing to remember is we're causing it to become a driveway, which is why it now becomes, I feel, our decision to
On
make.
back on us, and that's why, and it's, I said, I don't want to, take away from Mr. Hardeman's work, but, we're supplied with information certified by the surveyor that it meets the requirement for sightline distance in both directions. And also, Mr. Hammer showed that access in and out of the driveway works for cars coming, turning in and turning out of the driveway. So I think from that standpoint, it meets all of the requirements that we requested. It may not meet what Mr. Hardeman was looking for, but it met everything that we asked for as the board.
Mr. Fowler? Sir. Feel the same? Mr. Delaney?
I'm all set.
Mr. Patalia?
All set.
All right, I as well feel that to that point, whether or not we agree on it, those things I believe are important. So, all right. James, do you have anything else to add?
Just as a point of order to make certain that the letter is submitted through the planning office to Ms. McGinty this afternoon with the list of the waivers and the explanation of the, that you have that. Okay.
Which I believe we also discussed as we went along anyway, so that's not new, just the list is consistent now. What's that?
Well, yeah, because it's 1 through 7 now, yeah.
All right, so then with that, I'll ask, what is the pleasure of the board at this time?
Motion to close the hearing.
All right, I have a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the waiver requests, as we have presented in front of us, do we have a motion on the waivers?
So moved.
Motion made, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor of granting the waivers as submitted?
Included the price.
Yeah, how about the figures on the,
Including the side. I don't know if that was a waiver, I think, was
That's
that?
gonna go on the permit part.
But it's part of the waiver, 9.5.
I see, why don't we put it in both? So I want to
Okay.
just
Yep.
belt and suspend to this. So since the waiver's being granted here, the waiver's being granted with the, what is the number?
addition of the price?
The 10,876.40 that was listed, we got that from the town engineer. That's the number we're working with. That's the number that will be in lieu for 315 feet as submitted. So we'll just put that in this.
Yep.
And then we'll add it to the permit as well. So, so the motion on the waivers with that additional language about the sidewalks, we have a motion made. Do we have a second? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. As to the special permit and definitive subdivision request.
Motion to approve with all the discussion that we've had and.
So, I'm sorry, let me do the thing again, just that we find that the criteria required 9321 through 9326 have been met to
Yes.
the board's satisfaction?
Yes.
All right, so we do that first.
Yes.
Now, to the permit and its limited, its requirements. Mr. Fowler, sorry.
Ditto.
All right, so just so we run down this, so we have it clear of the things that we've requested. So we have the lighting, the light poles that have been put in at the end. The pad for the students at the front. The post office,
Yeah,
the place for the
CPU. It's a locker, basically.
Right, the CP for the mail, as, we have the letter, right?
Yep, I have the letter
Okay.
here from the
As-
post
as
office.
Requested by the post office, we'll add that in.
Approves the
Yep.
For the mail person.
The other, one of the other, that they will submit the updated plan showing the
geometry.
The geometry that was requested, that you can meet, it just wasn't on the plan as submitted. Is it me?
Fire department will approve.
Fire department, right.
The
that's it.
changes.
The changes for, and that they still have the appropriate in and out access.
One, also I think one clarification needs to be determined what you're doing for water.
Oh, actually, as discussed this evening, that one of the two.
One of the two
options on water will be implemented. After your discussions with DPW, if you have to go with alternative 2, you'll do that, or the first alternative.
Yep.
Is that, okay. Feel you miss anything?
So, the street naming process. We already have the White Pines.
Oh, that's
just
right, the buffer.
condition.
Yep, I'm sorry. So the trees in the back, so as the plan shows, the 6 evergreens to be put in and with the height requirements as required by the bylaw, going in at 8 feet at minimum.
The HOA, we talked about that, having that as a condition, and then there was a no parking signs down the driveway as a
Okay,
condition.
that's right. So we have the no parking signs that are going down the driveway.
Yep.
So they're not blocking that up, and, what was it, I'm sorry? Oh, the homeowners association.
Utility.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, so we're covered?
I think so,
All right.
that's my note.
All right, so we have that motion made. Do I have a second? Motion made, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
David, and it's not even 11 o'clock.
I tell you.
The late, the last meeting, so.
These poor, just being
Great evening.
all night, 91.
All right.
All right, moving on to agenda item,
So I think we have the motion.
oh, really? Aye. It's not over. 91 Northgate Road. Do we have anybody here for that?
Oh,
Okay, so we'll continue that to 7:15. Do I have a motion to continue 91 Northgate Road to 7:15?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about 91 Northgate. How long are we going to wait for this to get resolved? I don't know what we have done since, but we've been here 3 or 4 meetings with 91 Northgate on the agenda, and they never show. We have a couple of abutters here that have been here all night, waiting for some resolution. I mean, what do we say to them?
I mean, all I can say is that as far as when I've been here, we've never knocked something off the agenda just because it's continued to be postponed. I don't know, unless the board wants to simply register a vote on it and vote it down, but other than that, we've never done that I'm aware of.
You can make a motion to have a time certain. In other words, sure, we're not going to keep, you can tell them that we're not going to continue this until you have a time certain, when you know you're going to have everything done and you'll be here. We've done that before. Not very frequently, but we've done that before.
Was there any update from the building inspector by any chance on this, Don, do you know?
I'm sorry?
We have not heard from her.
Yeah.
and Caitlin Morris did follow up and hasn't had a response as well, so.
So then, let me ask Mr. Fowler, as our
Yes.
senior member.
Yeah, sure.
If we want to continue this so that it does not have a next hearing until they request a new date,
That's right.
how do we do that?
I don't think you can, but you have to inform them. We don't want another, we're going to either, the next meeting, you're coming in here, we're either going to hear the hearing, or you tell us the time certain when you're going to continue this so that we can have a hearing.
Okay.
Huh?
Either
Deny, because the next vote will be a vote to
So then, all
deny.
right, so the motion would be to continue this to 7:15 on September 9th, 2019.
Right.
As well as inform the petitioner that at that meeting, if we do not receive information from them as to a time certain when we will be able to resolve this matter, the board intends to take a vote on the matter at that meeting.
Right.
That,
Yep.
That's fine.
that work?
Fine, that's fine.
All right, so that's.
We've given them 3 or 4 meetings
That's the
already.
motion?
Yes.
So do I have a second? All right, motion made, seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Okay.
What time is that on the agenda?
That's for 7:15.
So,
Sorry, if they don't tell us, there's nothing we can do. I don't, and if they roll in at the end of the meeting and just show up at the last second, I can't do anything.
Is this your night out? Thanks for waiting, folks.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, gee,
Okay, so.
Very nice couple.
All right, so that brings us back to the administrative action items 4 and 5. So, does anybody have anything they want to talk about on 1438 and 1470 Main Street landscaping discussion?
I guess, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask what has been done down there, what has not been done. I think they're looking for some trees. I am not sure what they're looking for, to tell you the truth, so nobody from them, from that.
They were looking for a tree to be replaced and to cut the brush, the bamboo or whatever the hell they got there.
Bamboo.
And the thing is, that's the complaint that I got from the homeowner that lived next door. They wanted to clean it up. Now, they say they've gone in there and cut the bamboo, but the bamboo keeps growing back.
you're never gonna get rid of that stuff.
You're never gonna get rid of it.
It's,
So, where do we go from here?
Like, I think, I mean, I don't know, best I can tell, we gotta have them come in, we gotta talk about it, figure out, I mean, what's,
we brought Burger King in here.
right, amenable to everyone is a way to address it, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I did follow up with them. They weren't able to make tonight's meeting, so,
Our patience has limits,
Yeah.
I guess would be the best way
You know
to,
something? But the bamboo had to be there before they built it.
we'll take it off the agenda
Right.
until they confirm.
They didn't
a date.
plant it.
well, I don't want to, I don't want to take it off because there are residents who have concerns that want it addressed, so I don't want to just leave it open-ended to whenever they feel like showing up.
Well, he was supposed to be in here tonight.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
I think,
One more shot.
you know, after being nicely asked to come in several times, at some point, we have to take other action to get resolution. So
Yeah.
they need to be made aware that if they continue to fail to show up, then we have to
I was
decide.
under the impression that there were trees
You'll make a
that
decision
died,
without them.
and he wanted the trees replaced.
Right.
I don't, then he said something about the way the weeds are growing. Obviously, he's talking about the bamboo. Now, these guys, this bamboo had to be there. If they're talking about getting rid of the bamboo, it had to be there from the beginning.
I mean, this letter that was in here discussing the bamboo is talking about painting it with some sort of destructive chemical or something, and they need to maybe do it again.
Then we'll
It's
kill all the
beyond me.
dogs. Then you'll kill all the dogs
Yeah,
and
I
animals.
think that was sort of the concern that was in the letter, was sort of how much they want to do to try to address that, in that it could damage other things, and that's the, I think, the balance. But I think, you know, it's a
Wanna be
conversation that would be
responsible
better
for
had here and not over email.
You know, I wouldn't want to be responsible for spraying stuff in there to kill something.
Mr. Chairman, let's bring both parties in next meeting and get it resolved and get it finished.
Okay, so we'll see if we can do that, hopefully.
Because I tried to, Mr. Chairman, work with both of them.
Yep.
And they didn't seem to be satisfied with cooperating, so I think. discussing
a
with
little bit
planning
like
board is the
our
best
issue
action.
on, well, no, I was thinking the one on Woburn Street. At some point, we're gonna be the arbitrator of what's fair. So I think, you know, it would be best if they both show up, or we're gonna decide what's fair without whoever's not here. I think.
You get to be Judge Judy.
I wish. What a dope.
I tried.
just gonna drag this out now. All right, so that brings us to B5, which is 20 Carter Street. Just when I discussed this with Anna at the beginning, I think her suggestion was, if we have some specific questions about this, the things that we were gonna ask, can we discuss what those were, and we'll put those out to them anyways, to try and get an answer to them regardless of whether they're here or not. And whether we determine to release the bond, we can make that decision, but I'd like to get those comments to them regardless. They can always come in to answer them, but I'd like to get them out at this point to them. So I'll run around the room, just, you know, Mr. Fowler, what were your things that you wanted to bring up?
Well, I want to just throw it right out right here. Is there anyone here that has specific questions? Is there anyone here that has specific questions for this applicant for the release of the bond? If there's no one here that has anything, we can vote on releasing the bond. That's all I'm saying.
I do not have any questions.
Okay. So, Mr. Delaney? Mr. Fattalia?
Yes, I have questions. I want to know the status of their outstanding permits. Are there any? Any safety violations at the rink? Last time I was there, the rink was in some disrepair as far as the boards and a safety issue for the players that were playing at the high school level.
All right, well, I will say this.
Has that been resolved or not?
I know that the boards were reset. The ice was taken out, the boards were reset on the newer of the two rinks, the one that had the bowling issue. I haven't viewed it, but I know it was done, only because I was told it was done by people I know that play there. So, that has
Are we aware of any outstanding permit violations or health violations from the property?
The one I'll say that I know is still outstanding, that I want them to fix and make a decision on. And I think we may have to give them the ability to do so by making a non-substantial change, is the parking issue in that front section when you first come in. We originally had tried to leave an open space to allow buses to kind of make a swing through. The buses really don't do that, first of all. But more to the point, it's ignored because people park where there aren't lined spaces and eliminate that entire space anyways. Or, in the alternative, what they've done to try and prevent people from parking there is they take the curb stops and make a circle of curb stops in that area to prevent anyone from parking there, which to me defeats the purpose. I don't care so much that cars are parked there. The intent was to try and have a turnaround space. If they aren't going to have a turnaround space, which you obviously cannot have if you have curb stops in a circle on the ground, because unless you're driving a tank, you can't go over those. So I'd rather see them line it in that section. They could take some spaces out at the far end or not. I don't really care. But at this point, it's pointless to not have that section lined.
Where they're parking anyways.
Where people are either parking if they don't put the curb stops out, or they put the curb stops out, which just becomes a hazard, I think, and it looks stupid. That's the other thing.
It's an accident looking to happen.
Right. God forbid they have a snowstorm, and for some reason, the guy who plows there isn't aware of those things in the middle of the parking lot like that, too. Again, someone else's problem, but still, unnecessary.
No.
So, to me, what I would ask is that we tell them that we would like them to line that section of the parking lot, and do not want them to put the curb stops out there anymore. I don't know exactly how many spaces would go in there, but they can figure it out. They'd be the same. And if it's necessary that we need to give them a non-substantial change to the configuration in the parking lot, we can do that if the board's fine with it. But I see no sense in what's going on there continuing, because it's one or the other. Either cars are gonna park there and they should be parked in proper spaces, or not, or, you know what I mean? Like, and that's, to me, that I think is necessary.
That's always been a problem with always.
Yeah.
Even when it was a tennis club, it was a problem.
So I'll, Mr. Chairman, I'll draft a letter and send it out to the applicant to summarize these questions and present the correspondence back.
And one more thing to Mr. Fatalia's questions, can we find out if there are any outstanding code violations or open permits?
Or health violations.
Health violations, anything that, there's any red flag that could potentially us releasing the bond?
Well, I mean, the bond is really, I feel uncomfortable
Is it
holding up
limited
the
now?
bond
Okay.
for health violations.
Right.
We have a department that handles that.
Well,
and
construction open permits,
Their permit has long expired.
it has.
Yeah.
But isn't
It's
this,
not valid.
isn't this bond for something they applied for? and
For the
they never
restaurant.
did?
Right,
For the
which,
restaurant
which
that
they
they
can't even do without coming back to us again anyways.
So then they.
But,
Why
so that's what I
can't
mean, I
they
feel,
return their money? Why-
We're spinning a
What are we
wheel.
holding their money for?
in this
That's
case,
the question I'm asking.
in this case, we're holding it for one more meeting in order to attempt to get some resolution to a couple of questions we got. Well, I mean, the bond, I think, does relate to that parking
Yeah.
because the parking was part
Yeah.
of when we did that. So I feel that that one being resolved is in connection to this. So I feel comfortable holding this up for that. But not health violations, because that's someone else's to deal with.
Okay.
You know, they went in and dealt with them once on that. It's their job to follow up and fine or not fine or whatever they do.
And for the rest of the board, Mr. Johnson will know how upset I'll be because I won't be here on the 9th if they come in with a list of excuses. Because
Yes.
we went through this while our grandsons and son and grandsons were playing hockey over there for the high school at all. And we'd have to call them up here every Saturday, every game day, when we'd find things wrong. We had a litany of things. Exits blocked with snow. I mean, it went on. But they got not to like us. But it was for the safety of the patrons.
All right, so that brings us to.
That's Steve.
That brings us to old business. Do we have any old business to
Yes.
discuss? Mr. Fowler?
Real quick, I think it goes back about a year. This is an easy one, Anna. I was talking specifically to you, that's why I said that. The power company had a permit with the construction on Powell Lane Road and Route 38. We asked them to do some, to clean up the areas, plant some trees. They've gone beyond that. They have a frontage on that property that, A, has cost them a lot of money. They were out there this week planting more trees along Route 38. It really, I mean, some of the other businesses that have buildings behind them should take notice of this. They're doing a fine job, so when you have a chance, just send a letter saying that we noticed how all the work you've done on your landscaping. We appreciate your, because at the time they didn't want to, stepping up to the plate to get this done.
Attention to detail. How's that?
Efforts.
Yes.
All mulched and looks good.
I'm not-
Any other old business? Any new business? All right. Correspondence, I guess it would fall under correspondence. We have Mr. Fowler's letter here for NIMCOG.
Yep.
All right, so Mr. Fowler is going to resign from serving on the NIMCOG committee.
Right.
All right, so that opens up the NIMCOG committee for someone on the board to be our representative. So I'm not going to ask anybody right now, but between now and the next meeting, if anybody is interested in doing NIMCOG, we'll try to address it at the next meeting, so we can put a representative on to NIMCOG, all right?
We could have hired Mr. Plunkett. He was on it for a long time.
That's true.
I can't.
Make it,
I
make
can't
it
be-
an associate
Can't do
member?
Thursday nights, so I I'm
Thursday
not-
nights, I have the school building committees on
I
Thursday
can't do
nights.
Thursday nights either.
Right, yeah.
They go.
They do this.
Wow.
They do this.
All right, so let's,
Well, I'll put it on the
well,
agenda.
we'll put it on the agenda and we'll see what happens.
That's you too, right?
Yeah. I think NIMCOG might have to start changing their meeting night. Okay, so that takes care of that one. Any other correspondence? We got the other list here.
Mr. Chairman,
Cumberland
I
Farms.
just have the correspondence as just a summary of the complaint I received, and then I addressed it with Cumberland Farms and then Vic's Waffle House, and they both are addressing the landscaping.
Okay.
So I'll go and visit that site over the next couple weeks to confirm the landscaping's all set. But that should be settled, so.
I feel like, just because we're mentioning the landscape, and the one at Walgreens, it seemed like they did a pretty good job in putting in the replacement landscaping. I don't think we've heard from a butter, so hopefully they're satisfied with, I mean, it seems like a pretty substantial amount of tree/bushes or whatever it is they put along that whole South Street part, so that's good. Was there anything in the town planner's report?
I didn't
No.
have one.
Okay. All right, so with that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Good evening.